Hey everyone, welcome to the very last episode of Game Face for 2018, which really isn't an episode of Game Face at all. It is our best of 2018 awards. We are going to hand out awards in 23 different categories, the most we have ever had in our Game of the Year awards.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah. Usually we have like genres that'll leave and then they'll come back. This year, we kept all the genres from last year and re-added some that we had not had in the awards for last year.
The spread was actually pretty good this year in
Yeah.
terms of like genre distribution.
Absolutely. We have a ton of content to get to in this show, so I'm not going to mess around with a lot of pleasantries at the beginning. We do have a couple things we got to catch.
It's going to be thoroughly unpleasant the entire time.
Not true at all. We do have a couple things we got to get to before we get on with our awards, and that is both of the fantasy leagues that are going on at SIFTD right now. So the first league we're going to talk about is the actual fantasy football league that's going on at SIFTD. I gave you an update about this a couple weeks ago. We are headed into the championship this coming weekend. So Sam, bring up the graphic. I am in the championship game. First playoff game against Mitch. My team exploded for 154 points. In the other bracket, take the graphic down there just for a second. The other bracket, it was a close first-round playoff game, but Paul Krupka won 140 to 130. And then this weekend, the weekend that just passed, I was playing Robert Diana, who has been in first all season long. And I feel for Robert Diana because he has a team that is very similar to a team that I have in another league. And it was the best team in the league in the other league, and he was the best team in our league. And this weekend of fantasy football, they're calling it Sunday Bloody Sunday, was like the worst week of fantasy football in the history of fantasy football. So a lot of teams won this week that probably didn't have any business winning. I don't know if I would say that about me and Robert. He was definitely better than me, but I had a pretty good team. And because he had such rotten luck this week, I move on to the SIFTD Bowl. In the other bracket, Colin Wallace, also known as Matt Kyle Rocks. He had a good team all year. He was in first place for a lot of the year. And he beat Paul Krupka by about 30 points. So it is Shane versus Matt Kyle Rocks in the SIFTD Bowl for the championship. And I have not won this league.
What's your team name?
I just use LA Chowderhead. Yeah, Chowderhead is a nickname that people in Pennsylvania gave me years ago. And when I started playing fantasy football back in like 1996, everybody called me that. So I called my league Chowderhead. And now every league I play in, I just use that name. So I have never won the SIFTD Fantasy League. Someone else has won the first 2 years. I did go to the bowl the first year and lost. Last year I didn't go to the bowl, or maybe I have them reversed. Either way, I've never won the SIFTD Fantasy League, and I have a chance this year against Matt Kyle Rocks. So you guys won't know what happened until we come back from break in January, but when we do, I'll be sure to let you know how it all went down.
That was my only chance to win anything fantasy related.
That's right. And if Matt Kyle Rocks wins, we have a trophy that we send out. And then we also have a plaque where we put the champions on the plaque every year. So whoever wins will get their name put on the plaque, and we'll hold the trophy for the next 12 months until a new champ is crowned next year. So before we move on, I just want to say thank you to everybody who played. It was a 12-man league, and like I said last time, pretty much everybody stuck with it all the way to the end. We had like one owner who kind of checked out at the end, but his season, he wasn't going to make the playoffs anyway. So it was a great year, great league. Want to thank everybody for participating, but only two stand, and I'm one of them. All right, now let's get on to our video game fantasy league that Matt and I have been going toe-to-toe in for the last 3 years. Or has it been 4 years for you and I? 3.
3, because the first year was Marcus's picks.
Yep. And just to refresh your memory, I beat Marcus the first year. Matt has beaten me for the last 2 years. And now I'm trying to even up my record at 2-2 with this season.
I don't think there's any trying this year.
So let's bring it up, Sam. The final results of the SIFTD Video Game Fantasy League. So ultimately, Matt only ever had 9 games.
Yep.
We had 2 alternates this year, but he had really rotten luck with games that he drafted.
Dreams let me down.
Yeah. He had really rotten luck with games that he drafted being pushed out of 2018. Usually that's my problem. And every year before this, I was always the one who never finished with a full lineup of games. I did that this year because I played it really conservative. And so I did get 10 games into my team. I finished with 845 points, and Matt finished with 720. And so there you go. I am the champ once again of the Sifted Video Game Fantasy League. My record's 2-2 now.
How in the hell is Valkyria Chronicles that close to Spider-Man?
Yep. 84 for Valkyria Chronicles.
Unbelievable. So some of the scores, Spider-Man got robbed. I mean, it wouldn't have saved me, but Spider-Man got robbed.
It definitely should have scored way higher than that. I don't know why it didn't, but you're right. I think it should have scored higher than that. But I am the champion. Finally. Good season, Matt. And I'm 2-2 now in the Sifted Fantasy League, and I have an idea for something for next year that I'm not going to spoil, but it might have something to do with one of you guys getting in with Matt and I to compete against Matt and I. So, again, that's something we'll talk about when we get back for the new year. But there's kind of an official Sifted user league that's going on the site, and the winner of that may or may not make it in to compete with Matt and I. So that might be something new going forward. But another great season with Matt. A lot of fun. We'll draft again in January, one of the first episodes we do in 2019, and we'll start it all over again. So with that, it's time to get to the awards, people. And we're going to kick everything off with the best first-person shooter. So before we really get into all these, I'll give you a quick rundown for some of you maybe weren't patrons last year, don't know how we do them. For most awards, Matt and I just pick a winner. If we were to choose like 5 nominees, like we used to choose at Game Trailers, and go through each nominee and then choose a winner, we would be here literally like until next week. So Matt and I, for most categories, we just pick one winner, no runner-up. And then for the last 3 or 4 categories, we actually do have a runner-up and a winner, but those categories tend to be kind of the bigger ones and the ones you guys probably want to see other nominees for. So with that in mind, let's get on with Sifted's Game of the Year Awards for 2018. We're kicking everything off with first-person shooter. Matt, what is your pick for the best first-person shooter of 2018?
My pick is Far Cry 5.
Very good choice.
Really?
You don't feel good about that?
I feel okay. I mean, the problem became when I sat down to look at this list, I was like, I haven't really played a lot of first-person shooters this year.
I mean, just in general, you've kind of fallen off from first-person shooters in your playtime just in general.
Yeah, it's not a huge multiplayer person. Like, you that kind of, sticks a fork in it to some degree. Really, the only 2 major first-person shooters I played this year were Far Cry 5 and Battlefield. And Battlefield certainly wasn't going to win this. So, Far Cry 5, I didn't think it was the greatest Far Cry game, but I did have a good time playing it. And I like all the Far Cry games for the most part, even going back to Far Cry 2 with its annoying respawning checkpoints. I like the open world thing. I like how most of the guns feel. I am a big fan of bow and arrow crap, and the setting worked pretty well. I mean, we went over in the episode at the time over kind of how the story isn't quite as well formed as it might have been.
Yeah,
but
they definitely pulled back on
Yeah.
Some of the stuff they could have done.
But I dug it. I'm looking forward to the new one, based on, the sequel, more or less, a side story in February. And, yeah. I also almost kind of forgot this was this year. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's one of those games that came out early in the year, but we always say, you know what, we're not going to forget the games that came out early in the year, and here we are remembering one of them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's good. I have no problem with someone picking Far Cry 5 for a best first-person shooter. I think in this case this year it was kind of a tough choice because every game was a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Like, not every game had a campaign this time. Not every game had multiplayer this time. And so you kind of, I think in a lot of cases, you're just going to end up picking something that really resonated with you.
Yeah, it comes down to what you value in either a game or at least in a shooter. And to me, I'm more of a solo experience, sort of like, put me in a world kind of guy when it comes to this stuff. And Far Cry 5 did that the best for what you can say. I mean, maybe I could have cheated and said Red Dead Redemption, but I didn't play it in first person, so I felt that was...
I tried. It made me sick.
Yeah, I just didn't like it. I like to see the animation of Arthur, so I decided not to cheat that way, and I went with Far Cry.
Yep. All right, so my pick for the best first-person shooter of 2018 is Call of Duty Black Ops 4. I know people who maybe haven't followed me since I've been working on Sifted may be like, of course Shane is picking Call of Duty because he's always loved Call of Duty. But things have been a lot different for me since I started Sifted. I am not like a gigantic Call of Duty fan. I've not been a huge fan of the last few games. And that all changed with Black Ops 4. I should not probably be surprised, though, because Typically, I am a big fan of Treyarch's Call of Duty games. They tend to be my favorite Call of Duty games. For whatever weird reason, I also tend to be the best at them. I don't know what it is about Treyarch's games, but I am way better at them than I am at any other Call of Duty games. And I'm sure that played into it at least a little bit for me picking it as my first-person shooter of 2018. But Black Ops 4 is a gigantic game. I know a lot of people have made a big stink about the fact that there's no campaign, and they kind of swapped out the campaign for Blackout, which is a battle royale mode.
Sure doesn't seem to have hurt him at the register.
It hasn't hurt him at the register. It didn't hurt him critically either.
Yeah.
It's one of the highest reviewed Call of Duties in the last half decade or three-quarters of a decade.
I only played the alpha or whatever, but I thought the Blackout mode was fun.
I honestly have played very little of the Blackout mode. I played it a ton when I was reviewing it.
It's definitely the most appealing battle royale mode I've played in terms of just polish and feeling like it's supposed to feel. I'm certainly no expert on that, but I was like, oh yeah, if you're into this, I bet you'll really like it. And sure enough, everyone I know who loves battle royale has almost switched full time to this game.
Yeah, and for me, that's just icing on the cake. For a lot of people, that's a good enough reason to buy it all on its own.
Yeah.
I personally I have continued to just keep playing the multiplayer suite.
And you're doing well.
I like I said, I am the best at this franchise, Black Ops. For some reason, I have no idea, but I am. I can play these games and I can just kick ass, and I'll have a KD of 0.8 in all the other ones. It's very weird. I have not quite figured out yet why that is, but I am loving Black Ops 4 still. It's a game that I pick up and play when I have 5 or 10 minutes to spare here and there. I mentioned that on a prior episode.
Not a thing you can do with Battlefield.
No. I have fallen in love with Call of Duty again thanks to Black Ops 4. And when you really start digging into it with all the zombie stuff and the Blackout mode, I have not missed a campaign at all, probably because the last couple campaigns I've played, other than Infinite Warfare, have been, in my opinion, poor. So my expectations for single player were already pretty low for this franchise. I haven't really missed it. I feel like the multiplayer is great. The gunplay feels so damn good. I have a feeling I'm going to play this game all year long, and so it is my best first-person shooter of 2018. All right, next up is best multiplayer game, a category that a lot of times is synonymous with the prior category.
Yeah.
But in your case, that's not true, Matt. What is your pick for best multiplayer game?
Well, I had to sit and think also about what have I really played multiplayer this year, because I haven't played a lot.
Yeah.
And I ended up settling on Forza Horizon 4, which is probably the game I played the most with other people.
It's also a great multiplayer.
Yeah, I think they finally nailed kind of the mingle player aspect they've been trying to do for I'd say the whole series, or
at least pretty much.
At least since 2.
I mean, you could even tack just Forza Motorsport onto that as well.
Yeah. And I think teaming up to do kind of the co-op events is actually pretty cool. It's way better than I thought it would be. It seems kind of
way better than I thought it would be.
It seems like a silly addition to a driving game, but it works. They
fun.
Really found a way to make it work. And just every element of it's not intrusive. It doesn't force you to do it, but if you want to go and do it. I've never regretted joining a crew, not crew because that's a different game. I've never regretted joining up with a club members or just random people and driving around and doing stuff. It works. It's
I
really
even
cool.
Before it even starts, when everyone's just gathered together and there's just 40 cars, just almost in a smash up derby mosh pit around the starting grid.
Yeah, there's sort of a Fast and Furious race scene thing going on there.
Yeah.
It looks cool. And even just sort of the passive multiplayer stuff where you're playing against the drivatars of your friends and they all have different personalities because they're drawing from those players.
Yep.
Play styles, I continually get complaints from my friends about how my drivatar drives because I ram them constantly. I have no mercy in the passing lane. So I think they nailed it, and for once made me kind of understand. I think what they've been shooting for multiplayer wise for this whole series.
Yeah,
and it's great.
This is another game that I still play from time to time. I'll just boot it up and just jump into the world and just screw around with it for a while.
I haven't actually loaded it up since did they put the new expansion out, or is that tomorrow?
Yeah, it's not out yet.
That's the 18th. That's the 18th. That's right.
Coming soon. Well, actually tonight I think at midnight.
Is it tonight?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so it should be out there real soon. Great game. Even the base game is just amazing. I highly recommend it.
They always do good expansions, though.
They do. Yep. They can't do the weather now though because it's actually in the
No,
base
they actually
game.
have to do some, they have to new terrain, and I hope they do another Hot Wheels thing because that was a lot of fun.
Yep. Okay, so my pick for best multiplayer game does kind of go along with what I was saying when I introed this category. My best multiplayer game for 2018 is Call of Duty Black Ops 4. I did consider some other stuff. I considered Forza Horizon as well. I considered Fortnite. Didn't consider PUBG this year, obviously, for obvious reasons. I considered
you and a lot of other people.
Yeah, I consider Battlefield 5 as well. Multiplayer's great.
Yeah, I admit, I did actually pick up Battlefield 5 off the day we talked about it, the week it came out. The chat was talking about it being half off at Target. And so I went to Target that night, and I got it for half off and played it a while. I like what they did with it
it's
for
great.
the most part.
Yep, absolutely. But for me, Black Ops 4 ultimately won out because of the variety. And I know some people will say, but wait a minute, the base game doesn't have as much variety because it doesn't have the vehicles and things like that. I prefer my multiplayer games to be a little more bite-sized than the commitment to Battlefield 5 with something that doesn't always jive with me. It's hard for me to just be like, okay, I'm going to sit down now and dedicate 30 to 45 minutes to playing one match of multiplayer.
I do prefer the scope and commitment of Battlefield in that regard, but I completely understand why people wouldn't prefer that because it's just a different thing.
And you start thinking about the zombies, then you start talking about Blackout Battle Royale mode, the multiplayer. They've also done a great job with the base multiplayer suite, so every time I jump in, there's some special kind of spin on just even the core modes. So Team Deathmatch, they'll just jack up the kill count. Instead of it being 60, it'll be 100, and that drastically changes how you play the game. So I have just had a ton of fun with the multiplayer suite in Black Ops 4. I think I'm going to continue to. I'm so into the groove on it that when they announce new maps and the maps launch, I'm there that night checking out the new maps. When they launched Nuketown, I spent 2 hours just playing Nuketown over and over again. And again, they're doing a good job with that stuff because when Nuketown launched, they just had a Nuketown playlist. And you could play Nuketown in several different modes. They've been doing this for a long time, but I've been kind of out of the ecosystem for Call of Duty for the last couple of years, and I hadn't really experienced it firsthand. Now that they actually have a game that I like to play, and I'm seeing all their usual plans come into play with something I actually care about, I'm starting to see that they've kind of got it down at this point. So I don't think anyone can go wrong with Black Ops 4 if you like first-person shooters. It's a great multiplayer suite, so it wins my award for 2018. Next up, Best Adventure Game. Some people may be confused about what this is. Adventure games for us and for our purposes are walking simulators, first-person, walk around, solve puzzles, talk to people, and then point-and-click adventure games, the old-school sort of third-person fixed camera.
And I would say kind of like story-heavy, like indie stuff tends to qualify. Like
that's true.
Like something like Night in the Woods is an adventure game, even though it's action platforming.
Action-y,
Which is good because that's something similar to what I picked as well.
Yep. So, Matt, what did you pick for the best adventure game of 2018?
This actually was a pretty crowded category. I thought there was
a lot of good games this year
in that realm. But I ended up going with Forgotten Anne.
That's a game we've talked about on the show before.
Forgotten with an O.
It's with an O for some reason.
This one, I love the art style. I love the animation they did. I think the adventure stuff, the puzzle solving and kind of platforming really works well. And I love the premise that it's sort of like she's in this world where lost objects end up and they become sentient. And she has a thing on her arm that lets her draw the life force out of the sentient objects and kill them. And you can use that to solve puzzles in a more brute force manner, or you can do it in a way that doesn't kill anybody, which I find an interesting dichotomy because it changes how they see her, especially because she is basically like her and her father run basically rule this place. And she's sort of like the Gestapo of like she's there. Everyone's afraid of her. She basically keeps the objects in line and under threat of death of such.
Oh yeah.
And so she's sort of like a really scary, sort of almost Orwellian enforcer character.
You would never guess that.
No.
Looking at the footage.
But you can play her sort of as that, or you can play her as softening as the game goes along, because you do have control over what she does and her dialogue choices in places. And over the course of the game, basically she and her father are forcing the objects to build this giant bridge, they call it, that is going to let them open a portal to go back home. And they've essentially enslaved an entire dimension to build and like it kind of gets in the morality of what that means and why it matters, and does it matter, because I mean you're talking about socks,
right?
You know,
yeah.
But like it's just a really interesting premise that I think they realized extremely well. It also kind of reminds me of The Brave Little Toaster a little bit, which is a movie I liked as a kid, and I just think it's a great idea done really well. And I encourage anyone who looks at it and thinks it looks appealing or thinks that description sounds interesting to give it a try.
All right. My pick for the best adventure game of 2018 is something that I just played in the last 4 days.
Same.
So what happens for me is every year I play all the big stuff, because I need to for coverage, because that's what people care about and that's what they want to see us talk about. And then I have this window after I finish all the big games of like a week and a half to kind of pick up all the indie stuff that's kind of caught my eye throughout the year. And that's what I've been doing the last 4 or 5 days, is just playing a ton of indie stuff. And one of the games that I played over the last 4 days is Return of the Obra Dinn. You may have heard this game mentioned a little bit on the Game Awards. And it was kind of on my radar before, because I actually created the game page for this game on SIFTD. And I remember it from the first time I ever set my eyes on it, because there's no other game with this art style.
Not since Max went to color. Anyway.
Right. Yeah, so it's it kind of uses like a stipple technique. I'm sure there are artists out there that'll say, no, it's not stippling, but...
it looks like the old black and white Macintosh.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's 3D, and they could never run anything like that, but that is what that reminds me of.
But I think for the layman, most people would say it uses a stipple art style.
So it's like that, or like almost charcoal-y in places.
Yeah, but you can see the
It's really
stippling
cool.
now. Like, they use it for, like, particles and things like that. But anyway, this game is about a ship that went missing back in the 19th century. And you are an investigator trying to figure out exactly what happened and why it went missing. So it's an investigative adventure game for the most part. The writing is great. The investigative stuff is really, really cool. This game really kind of transports you back to another time where things were done differently. You didn't have the internet. Everything has to be done. You're a gumshoe. You're doing everything by hand. You're doing everything the hard way, everything the long way. You're poring over like ship logs to figure out who was on the ship, who wasn't on the ship. So you're using a lot of information like that to help you solve the case. And really, I think another big reason why this stuck with me so hard is when I was a kid, I read Moby Dick, and it was just blew my mind. Like it was like the first good book I really read. Like when I was a kid. You get all these corny books that you're given in school or your parents buy for you for Christmas or whatever. Moby Dick was the first real piece of literature I ever read. And the version of Moby Dick...
Impressive. Moby Dick is a slog.
Well, no, it was like a truncated version.
So it didn't include like the 4,000 pages of like whaling description?
No,
it was just the actual story?
Right,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't read the classic. I read like the version for like teenagers, even though I was younger than that. But the Moby Dick book that I had these amazing illustrations in it that looked almost identical to this game.
Like an etching.
It used like cross-hatching and stippling. And for me, those images in that book brought the book to life. It told me what Ahab looked like.
I think I know the edition you're talking about,
okay.
Actually. I think I remember. I've seen something like that. I had something like that.
But it stuck with me. And so years and years, even in my 20s, if somebody would have asked me what my favorite book was, I would have said Moby Dick because of that book and how it stuck with me. And everything about this. And there's one of my favorite bands from when I was that age was a band called Big Country, and their first album, the insert was also art that looks exactly like this. So for some reason, this style, it resonates with me, it sticks with me, and above and beyond that, it's a great adventure game.
In a big country, dreams stay with you.
That they do, in fact. Apparently, books stay with you as well. So that's it. My pick for best adventure game of 2018, Return of the Obra Dinn. I highly recommend it for anyone who's interested in games like this.
I played it for the first time this week as well, in the same reason.
Yeah.
And I did notice it when it came out. I was like, "Oh, what's that?" Because I love old the old Mac games. That's what I used to play in the computer lab when people weren't looking.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of, because of the maritime theme, it reminded me of Sid Meier's Pirates.
Oh, yeah?
I used to play on that Mac Plus all the time.
The OG Pirates. Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, look at that!" But yeah, I wish I'd played it sooner. Ignoring it was stupid because it was.
It flew way under the radar.
It did, but it was.
They only ever put out one trailer for the game.
Oh, I never heard of it until I saw it popped up on Steam, and the only reason I noticed is because while it was going through that top slot on Steam, you see that art style, and you're like, what the hell is that?
Yeah,
I've never seen anything
catches
like
your
that.
eye. Yeah.
The same reason I saw Aztez last year.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, what's that? Like it pops at you.
Yep.
But yeah, this was really good. It wasn't, Forgotten Anne kind of jumps out at me in the same way that things in my childhood sort of it reminds me of those things, and that's what really endeared it to me. But yeah, this is, I think this Return to Obra Dinn, and I'm not done with it, but I think already I'm willing to call it a must play.
There you go.
It's so good, and I can see why people have been kind of trying to bump it this award season, because absolutely more people should play this thing. Hopefully they get it on the consoles.
Or you could probably just wait after you're going to get a ton of big games here in like a week.
Yeah, and
after you get done with those, this game will probably go on sale, and you'll be able to get it cheaper.
It's only, full price is only like $20.
Yeah, it's not much.
And it's the guy who did Papers, Please.
Yep.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again,
the pedigree's there. Yep. So the writing's going to be great. And, yeah. So there you go. Let's move on to our next category, which is Best RPG. So before we share our winners for this, Matt has a bit of a different interpretation of what makes an RPG and what doesn't. And so it's going to affect this category and another one a little later on. But now
no spoilers.
Yep. Yep. And so I'll just let you explain it. Matt, what is your pick for... Well, actually, you're going to wait till I make my pick, and then you'll explain your perspective.
Yes.
But what's your pick for Best RPG of 2018?
My pick for Best RPG, and this is an increasingly annoying category to me because it's getting to the point where I think they should be separated between action RPG and regular RPG. But in the end, I landed on Assassin's Creed Odyssey because anything I play for 110 hours is probably
good.
something I liked.
Yep.
I liked Origins already, but I think Odyssey brings all these disparate pieces of Origin together into something that feels like a more complete game.
Yeah.
In a way, it feels like this is the finished game, and Origins was like the beta, a little bit. I love Cassandra. I think she's a great character. I enjoyed being her and kind of deciding how she'd react to things because she has kind of a sardonic element to her that I think is kind of the hallmark of all the best Assassin's Creed heroes, because Ezio kind of had that too. Every once in a while, you need these Assassin's Creed protagonists to sort of look around and be like, everything that's happening now is ridiculous.
Yeah,
because it is.
Yeah.
And I had a great time wandering through the world. I have a great time playing the various missions and meeting all the weird historical characters. I love their take on Socrates, which is one of the. It is not, as far as we know, historically inaccurate to say that Socrates was very annoying.
Yeah.
Because anyone who asks questions all the time like that is going to get on your nerves. I don't think there's an actual I don't think they actually say that in any of the old written. I don't think Herodotus ever actually says he was annoying, but probably didn't. They probably didn't mind putting him to death in part because of. They got him for corruption of youth, but really it might have just been asking too many stupid questions. But it just doesn't stop, but at the same time, I don't get sick of it. I would probably still be playing it.
I played this game so long.
Yeah, I'm up to how 100 over 100 hours, probably close to 110. I still haven't been to Sparta.
Wow.
Like I still parts of the map I haven't gone to because I'm just busy doing everything, and I dig it. I love it to death.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too.
I'm glad they're taking a year off because I feel like they've sort of nailed this formula, and it's the next step is to. For me, the next step is to really bump the writing and the narrative because they've got a good framework here, but they just aren't writing on the level of something like, say, Witcher 3.
And then they just hired Mark Laidlaw. So
they seem
perfect timing.
Yeah, we seem to be on the same page, Ubisoft and me. I love it, and even as someone who's loved the Assassin's Creed game since the beginning, when you completely reinvent something when they completely reinvent something you love, it doesn't always mean you're going to get on board with it because it's not what you liked before, right?
Absolutely true.
But I got no complaints about any of what they're doing with the series right now. I think they're completely on the right track, and I'm glad they did that. I'm glad they've changed it the way they did because I don't think I could have taken another one of those last.
I wouldn't have continued playing this franchise if it didn't evolve.
And the action RPG thing is just getting out of hand at this point. I think everyone wants to make their game an action RPG
because it's the genre that sells.
Yeah, and you're just cramming RPG elements into everything, sort of like there's even Call of Duty at this point. It's been for a while, but I think they nailed sort of the action part's good, the RPG part, the combat and all that really works, and the climbing and everything. The RPG part works because I feel like I have control over how she's built, what you choose in your skill trees really changes how the combat functions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you get the Mass Effect style options of how to choose how to respond to things. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
That actually had impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it all comes together real well. It doesn't have as much impact as something like in The Witcher 3, but I think that's what I mean when I say they step the narrative game up next time.
Yep.
But everything else pretty on target, boys.
Yeah, they did a
boys
great
and girls
job.
up in Ubisoft country. Well done.
Yep, they did a great job on Odyssey, without a doubt. And my pick for the best RPG of 2018 is God of War. And this is where Matt and I kind of diverged a little bit. He wasn't comfortable calling God of War an RPG. I was, and so Matt did not consider God of War for this category.
No,
and I did.
I'll tell you my runner-up for this category, though, was Dragon Quest XI.
That's
Which is
surprising.
Which is a strange,
but it's more traditional.
More traditional. It was because it's the kind of thing. It's like, do I like Assassin's Creed or do I like Dragon Quest? I don't know. It's like they're so disparate. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's like you mush those two together, action RPG and regular RPG together. I'm sitting here comparing Diablo 2 and Baldur's Gate 2, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But like for Dragon Quest is one of those things. I just kept going back and playing it and like wasting just to chill.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it.
But that's, I mean, with games like that, you can chill
Yeah.
playing them. You don't have to be engaged and like on it like 24/7.
God of War, I don't feel it's an action RPG. Like it's, and I couldn't find anything online that said that disagreed with me. It's listed as action adventure on Sony's own site, on Wikipedia, everywhere. I just feel like if you're going to be an RPG, you have to have more emphasis on the development of the character in terms of their abilities and in terms of the level being tied to that. And God of War is so much about like collecting the various forms of currency. All your character progression for the most part comes from upgrading your gear. And like the skill tree in it is more about expanding combos. And I just think it's an action game to me. It's an action adventure game to me, especially because the narrative and cinematic element of it gives you no player control. Like I don't get to choose how Kratos reacts. I don't get to make any dictation about what kind of a character he is. So to me, it's more of just a cinematic action game. I shouldn't say just. I'm not saying it's like a lesser game because it's not. I don't think of it as an action RPG. It just doesn't match that criteria for me in a way that like say Horizon Zero Dawn did, because the skill tree in that was so robust in terms of deciding how you attacked things and how you fought things. And I still could control how Aloy interacted with the world with the dialogue trees and stuff. So that's pretty much my distinction. And I realize that kind of that is getting more and more blurry.
It's really hair splitting.
I mean, and actually but it's getting more and more blurry, but I still think it's a distinction that makes sense for this game. I'll tell you what game I have a harder time like finding the edge on is Spider-Man.
Really?
Spider-Man I find to be more of an action RPG in the sense
I would not agree with that
in the
at
sense
all.
that the skill tree and the upgrades are much more tied to experience points from combat, and then they change how you fight as Spider-Man. But at the same time, it's so
the same
oriented.
thing happens in God of War, though.
Not to the same degree. And
We've had this discussion before during the game, and you keep moving the goalposts. So last year it was the character needed to level.
Well, that's just an example. I think you just see numbers and a sword, and you say it's an action
No,
RPG.
I mean, I'll tell you what usually is kind of the tipping point for me, and that's like skill trees. If there's skill trees in the game, then typically I feel like it's an action RPG.
Well, then Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal is an RPG.
How?
Because you have skill trees on the weapons that you gain by shooting things and gaining experience with each weapon.
Your character doesn't level up, though.
No, but your guns do.
Yeah, but
But the guns are more important than the
You have to have a
character.
skill tree, and your character has to level up.
Yeah, I just don't buy it. Like, and again, I did some digging when we talked about it just to make sure, and like, I can't find anyone who terms this game an action RPG.
Well, action RPG is a term that is not used a lot. Like,
well, if you go to the Wikipedia article for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the first thing it says is Assassin's Creed Odyssey is an action role-playing game.
yeah, I'm not going to rely on Wikipedia to decide things.
Oh, I will, because
I'm not
have you
gonna
ever
do that.
seen Wikipedia editors go at it over a video game's genre? It lasts weeks.
I
at
haven't,
times.
but I don't care.
There
really
is
don't.
nowhere anywhere that's listed as that. IGN listed as action, Best Buy listed as
But
action
again,
adventure.
IGN doesn't even have action RPG. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Like most of the places don't even have that designation.
Well, we don't have action RPG either. We just called it an RPG.
No, I'm saying on the website. Mm-hmm. Like, IGN doesn't have a genre called action RPG. They don't even have it. We do.
That's one way.
Sony
that's one solution.
Sony doesn't call any of its games action RPGs. None of them. Like, they're called they just call them. It's kind of like what they do at the Game Awards is kind of what happens in the rest of the industry. Action RPG is kind of like a more otaku term, so that people like us who really get into games can kind of. It's kind of like with music. Like, a lot of people will say, oh, that's an indie band. But I'm like, no, that's a shoegaze band, or that's a post-punk band. People who are really into stuff try to find more granular designations for things to make it easier for them to talk with other people who are into it as much as they are. And that's kind of what happens with what has happened with the action RPG, particularly with sites that have been around a long time, like GameSpot and IGN. When they built those databases, that genre didn't even exist.
I also feel like the mid-2000s BioWare games kind of ruined a lot of it. Like they blurred so much, and like Mass Effect in particular, like changed sort of what you thought of when it came, because it was an action game.
Yeah, but the first one was really weird.
Yeah. But it was still an RPG because you were building your character and making decisions, and you were altering the story as you went through. You were playing that role, and that role mattered what you wanted it to do.
Yeah.
But it was still a cover shooter, So kind of action RPG shifted. Whereas before that, I think action RPG. If you said action RPG to me, I'd probably think like Diablo.
Yeah. The other thing, that was originally that's where it came from.
Yeah.
Diablo is like the first action RPG, basically. But because it was it and like two other franchises, they never got like their own designation.
And you got to the point where remember the PlayStation 2 era where you had like what were those like the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance and like Champions of Norath. So that was sort of like a little
That was like the gateway kind of to what we have now.
Yeah, because as I recall, it took a long time for the action RPG to really come into its own on consoles. Yeah. Because it was too hard to do. I mean, the consoles couldn't handle the power wasn't.
Well, when they decided, hey, you know what, we're just gonna not even try to do that really far pulled back isometric angle, and we're gonna make it more like a typical action adventure game.
Because we don't have a mouse.
Right. That's when the console gamers started saying, hey, maybe I do like role playing in my video games.
And then we had to start. Well, wait a minute. What about Zelda?
Yeah.
And like,
I mean, the bottom line is that all genres are just starting to melt together. I think we talk about this again like every year when we do the Game Awards. Every genre now has RPG elements or roguelike elements. I mean, eventually the population of the Earth is all going to be like a brownish tan. Like, eventually we're going to have like just video games.
Yeah, there's going to be a level up system in Tetris soon.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's just kind of the way it's
headed. I feel like did that go back to kind of like Call of Duty 4, where suddenly they figured out that using sort of that leveling and sort of XP system was a good way to tie people like to their character. There's a weird investment in something when you see that when you see that bar
by hand, absolutely. And so anyway, in my definition, God of War is an action RPG, and my runner-up was Assassin's Creed Odyssey, so that would be my second pick. Absolutely. And I do feel like there's a lot of player agency in how you play God of War. You can just roll with the axe if you want, which is what I ended up doing because I just generally am kind of a melee player. But you could also use bows and all the other weapons that are in the game and get really good with those. I hardly even use like the Blades of Chaos. Oh, sorry. I just spoiled
Now you blew it. Well, it was like 9 months ago.
Wow. Have I passed the expiration date on that yet?
Yeah, but now you're in the period of people who are about to get it for Christmas.
I'm sorry.
And they're going to open that on Christmas morning and be like, shame.
I'm really sorry. I apologize, guys. I thought maybe I had gotten out of the grace period, but maybe you're right. I hadn't. But I freaking love God of War. And so because I do consider it an action RPG, it was the easy winner for me for best RPG.
Well, stay tuned.
Yep. Got more to go.
I didn't leave Kratos out in the cold.
Yep. Next up is Best Indie Game. Strange jump there from Best RPG to Best Indie Game. Who stacked this show, Kyle?
Sam.
It was Sam's fault. Next up, Best Indie Game. Matt, what's your pick?
It was also a crowded field.
Yeah,
but,
lots of good indie games this year.
One of my favorite games of the year was Subnautica, which I think came out in like January.
Yeah,
it was in early access
early
for a long time, but it was like, it came out 1.0, finally got released in like January, and I think it's on the consoles now.
Yep. Just hit consoles.
And I think I am not a huge survival game fan. I think we talked about that about Below last week, where we didn't like the survival game elements put in that. But for whatever, but I am a big fan of underwater stuff and looking at fish. And this game, this is the best time I had playing a game, I think, on PC all year, because I played it on PC, and it's very hard to figure out what you're supposed to do early on.
Yeah. It's a rough beginning.
Yeah, it throws you into it, but I don't really mind because it's so pretty. And once you figure out how something works, it's like, oh, okay, that works. I get it.
The pieces start to
That's
fall
cool. When
into
it comes
place.
to play, but like eventually you're building like submarines. And
it's insane what eventually happens.
Eventually you build like your own version of the Red October. I mean, it's a full size like giant submarine.
It's pretty insane to think that you start in a little like space pod in the middle of the ocean.
Your space pod with a knife.
What you can do.
And by the end, you're commanding this like a submarine with a moon pool. It's sending out smaller things. And, like, you're going down to the bottom of this crazy trench and like. I mean, it's fantastic. And early on, I mean, you're barely able to hold your breath for like 9 meters down, and eventually you find like when you first craft that oxygen supply, and you're just like, oh, like you're building bases underwater. It's great. It's like it's got kind of a No Man's Sky element to it, and it's like you're just sort of there to explore and kind of like you're trying to survive, but you're also there to explore and figure out what's happening on this planet and see all these weird creatures and find your way into these new biomes. And I just loved every minute of it. Like it's, when I think back on like all the, I scrolled through sort of all the indie picks of 2018, and this was the one I had the most fun playing. And I didn't want to forget it too because it was so early in the year.
Yeah, it's easy.
But
easy to do.
Also, I did play it early access like a year and a half ago, and I hadn't played it since then, and the final release was so much better and so much more polished.
Yeah, this was in early access for a
really long time. Yeah.
So when that happens, you kind of expect there to be huge changes, but I think this game even went above and beyond.
Yes, for sure. I would definitely, if you've got if you're ready to be patient and figure some stuff out on your own, or just look up a walkthrough. I mean, that's
we don't have that luxury when we play games.
Not usually, no. But the walkthrough thing is also interesting on this because some of the stuff you need to do is so like kind of gated in terms of like, well, you just got to find it.
Yeah.
That you're still not getting it for free. Basically, I would say.
Yeah.
You still got to do the work, even if you know what you're looking for.
Still time management and all that kind of stuff comes into play, even if you know what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I just love this game to death. Also, you're scanning some stuff.
Yep.
You can build a scanner and scan fish.
That's Matt's Achilles heel. You put scanning in it.
Let me scan. Yeah, I mean, one of these days. They're going to make just like some kind of weird surveillance game.
Scanners. They'll make scanners.
Scanners Fish Edition, and you'll
never fish heads explode.
You'll never see me again.
My pick for best indie game, and again, I'm going to discuss a little bit some of the other big indie games.
And good point, Vincent. Subnautica's free on the Epic Store.
That's right.
So if you want to try it, that's a pretty good way to try it.
For PC.
For PC, yeah.
Yep. I'm going to explain, after I tell you what I'm going to pick for best indie game, I'm going to explain that I went back and played some other stuff. So my pick for the best indie game of 2018 is Donut County. Some of you guys may not have even heard of this game. It is a very simple premise. It is a game where you control a hole. And that's it. You can see in the footage right now, you control a hole, and you go around, and you basically suck things up into the hole. And it's a puzzle game built around that ability.
It's like Katamari backwards.
And what I was going to say is it does have a Katamari flavor to it because as you play, the hole gets bigger and you're able to suck in bigger objects. So it does kind of have that Katamari vibe to it. Also, like Katamari, it's just funny. So I laughed my butt off playing this game. The downside of this game is that it's really short. I finished this game in about 2.5 hours, something like that. And so that is one thing that's to its detriment. But as I started looking through all the indie games for 2018, it astonished me that I really struggled to find anything innovative. Typically, indie games are incubators. They're where you can try stuff with low risk. You can try out all these crazy ideas and features. And if it doesn't work, so what? You didn't invest $200 million into the game. And if it fails, it's tough for some indie developers, but anymore, a lot of indie developers aren't really all that indie anymore. They have big teams now making these games. So I went back and played several of the indie games that have won awards at the Game Awards, for instance. So I went back and played Celeste. Did you play Celeste?
A little bit, yeah.
What'd you think of Celeste?
Didn't really move the needle for me.
Me neither.
I was impressed by there's more story to it. Like, the writing seemed good, but it just seemed like more Super Meat Boy stuff to me, and I don't really gel with that.
It was just mega hard platformer number 14C.
I feel like I'd like to watch a video of the cutscenes, but I don't really feel like I want to play any more of it.
I mean, I just felt like I was being tortured playing it. And I've said this about games like this before. I'm not a big fan of Super Meat Boy. I'm just like, why?
I'm also not a huge platformer fan in the first place. So like there are super hard game permutations I do enjoy playing, but platforming is not one of them.
Yeah. And I've said many times I'm kind of burnt out on the 2D platform because I've been playing it for like 40 freaking years. And so they have to do something really special to kind of catch my eye, and I just didn't feel like Celeste did anything like that. Like, I don't know.
I feel like the praise in that game really seems to be partly resting on whether you like that type of game or not, but also resting heavily on kind of the narrative and the writing.
Which is good.
Which is good.
For that genre, it's probably the best.
But there's also an element of like, that ain't the game.
Yeah,
like
you still have to
that's
play
not what I'm playing.
You have to play the game. Yeah, and that's where it kind of washed out.
I just sort of bounced off it.
I did too. Yep, I did not enjoy it that much. So, I started looking around at all the indie games. I'm like, what's the most innovative? What was the most fun? And for me, it was Donut County. Like, I just had it twisted.
I haven't even played it.
Get it? Like, it twists your brain with the puzzles, but it's also just really, really funny and clever.
So what are the puzzles exactly?
It's, well, you have to figure out what objects you need to take away from the world, essentially. So
to like clear the world, or
I mean, it's basically like a screen-by-screen puzzle game. But again, it is really short. It doesn't cost that much. I think it was like $12 or something like that when I got it. Even if you feel like it's a risk, it's not that big of a risk. But again, keep in mind, it does not last that long. So it's not one of those games you're going to buy on the Humble Bundle sale or a Steam store sale and play it for the next 2 years. But I probably would recommend buying it when you do find it a little bit cheaper. But there you go, my indie game of the year for 2018. Okay. Let's move on to Best VR Game. Matt, VR should be hitting its stride right now. We should be seeing the best VR games for every HMD. All of them have been out at least 2 years now. Developers should have the dev kits for these things wrapped around their pinky finger at this point. All VR games should be best in class at this point in 2018. Do you feel like we're getting there?
Well, my VR headsets have been packed in their boxes since I moved a year ago, so no, I don't really feel like they... I haven't seen anything that really made me pull them out.
I don't either. I don't feel like VR has managed to hit that sweet spot like most platforms do at that 2 to 3 year period.
Which is why for this category, I am doing the opposite of what I did for RPG, and I'm just going to pick what you picked.
And we do have the same winner for this category, and that is Astrobot Rescue Mission.
I mean, if there was one thing I would drag the VR headset out of the closet to play, it would be that.
Yeah.
Because I loved the little demo, the little short one they did in the Playroom VR.
Yep. And this is a full game of that awesomeness. I don't think it was even... I didn't really have to think about this category. And I definitely played a lot more VR games than Matt did this year. Not as much as probably
more than zero.
Yeah. Yes. Not as much probably as the Upload VR guys. And look, there were periods where my PlayStation VR just sat there doing nothing for 2-3 months at a time. Yeah. And I would say if I had to pick a best HMD for 2018, I would hands down give it to PlayStation VR. The quantity and the quality of content on PlayStation VR continues to rise, although not at the rate I had hoped it would.
Yeah, I think the quality is undoubtedly like in PlayStation's favor here.
Yeah, the as far as having like real games to play and those games feeling polished like any other AAA game or big budget game would, I think PlayStation VR has it by leaps and bounds, and this was undoubtedly PlayStation VR's best game this year. If I had an honorable mention, I'd probably give it to something like Moss. There were some other good kind of competitive VR games that came out this year, but I think most polished, most interesting, best use of the medium, absolutely Astrobot Rescue Mission. Let's move on to Best Action Adventure. So this is a category for the last several years. We've had games that straddle the line between action adventure and action RPG. And tying into what we were saying earlier, Matt, what is your pick for best action adventure?
My pick is God of War.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, yeah, you knew this was where that was going to end up if I didn't think it was an RPG. So pretty much the same reasons. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's
we're gonna have to talk about this game a lot over the next hour and a half.
It's a it's an amazing achievement in terms of like combat design and world design and character writing and narrative. A lot of the reasons I'm a big fan of the narrative actually I can't talk about because they come in the last hour of the game.
Yeah.
But thematically, there's some stuff that happens that drives home. Both thematically and in terms of character, there's some stuff that happens near the end that makes you see a lot of this stuff in very different light, and I think it's brilliant, and we may not fully understand what it implies until we get the next game, but it's great. And I
have a feeling a lot of people who play this game will never even see it.
This game actually had, according to Sony, according to Cory Barlog, like a surprisingly high percentage of people have finished it.
Wow.
It was like 50%.
Wow.
And like the normal is like 20 to 25.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I understand why.
Yeah.
Because I think the best part of this game, honestly, is its pacing.
Yeah, that's true. It's much longer than I thought it was going to be when I started it, but it never felt like it was going on too long at all.
Never drags. And it's like a 40-hour game, and it ends like right on time.
Yeah, and right when they have a little bit of extra thing to throw at you, and you're like, oh, wait, okay, well then, I'll see you next time, Sony Santa Monica.
In 8 years.
Yeah. No, I think we're getting a sequel to this pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, they have the engine and everything.
They've got it down. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I can't say enough good things about the combat. The axe is an achievement, especially for a character that has such an iconic weapon. To replace it with something else
and have nobody complain.
Move. And once you get your hands on it and you feel how good it feels, especially the swack when you hit something in the head with it when you throw it, and like you pull it back and it just whacks back into his hand. I mean, they did a whole little feature video on why that feels good, like how they took frames out of the animation to make it feel like it really hits him in the hand.
Snaps, yeah.
It's a very cinematic game. I think I understand when people say oh, I thought the fight with Baldur at the beginning was boring because it was just two guys knocking each other around and who cares? And I'm like, yeah, I get
How is that boring?
I get that, but it's also
wasn't one guy thrown through a tree?
Yeah, they're knocking each other through mountains and shit.
Yeah. How is that boring?
Well, some people don't like that because they're not in control. It's just a thing that the game is showing them. It's a cinema. You might as well be watching a movie. But I don't have a problem with that, especially in a cinematic game like this. And also, I think they set up in the early part of the game how powerful Kratos is. He's carrying trees around and stuff. And then when you see this little dude at come to the door and he just suddenly knocks Kratos over the house.
Yeah, I was like,
you're
shit.
like, oh, what the hell? It just starts it with it starts it quietly and the game, and then all of a sudden you're off. And it never stops. It never stops moving again. It's great. It's fantastic.
It really is. And since I had God of War in RPG, my best action adventure for 2018 is Red Dead Redemption 2.
And that would probably be my second pick.
Yeah, and that game clearly is not an action RPG. If anything, it's like an action sim.
Yeah, it's it's got some elements, but it's not that. It's more of a
Here's the Old West is
the dirty cowboy simulator.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Literally at times.
Yeah.
I would get so annoyed when his coat would get dirty. I don't know why.
Or the horse would get filthy and you'd wash it and your eyes would pop out at how shiny the horse looked. So yeah, maybe this is more of an action sim, but there's also a ton of adventuring in this game.
Yeah.
Post-launch, now that I finished the game, I'm just kind of poking around.
Didn't win Best Multiplayer, I noticed.
Yeah. No, it did not win Best Multiplayer game. But poking around on YouTube and seeing kind of what people are doing with this game post the big sort of initial impression month, the first month that it's out, people are just kind of moseying around the environment just looking for stuff and finding some really cool stuff in this game. So there certainly is a heavy adventure element to the game, in addition to a lot of the sim stuff that we were talking about before. But, that's just the beginning of talking about this game. Obviously, some of the best production values ever in a video game. Your mileage will vary with that depending on how tolerant and patient you are. I'm not the most patient person, so certain parts of this game that other people may love turn me off. But I can appreciate that other people would absolutely love some of that stuff, the realism, kind of the slower pace. I was listening to, I think it was Joe Rogan's podcast, and they had some guy on there who is a hardcore gamer. And a lot of times people will go on Joe Rogan's show and talk about games and try to act like they're hardcore gamers, and they're not. But this guy who went on there was, and he started talking about Red Dead Redemption 2, and he said, this game was custom made for 40-year-old white men. And I sat there and I'm like, you're absolutely right. 40-year-old white dudes love games like this because they love cowboy movies. When we were kids growing up, cowboy movies were the thing. I'm named after a cowboy movie, for God's sake.
That's true.
I am literally named after the movie Shane. So I think this is one of those games that older players who maybe are a little more patient will enjoy a little bit more. But no matter what, if God of War is out of the equation, it is undoubtedly, to me, the best action adventure of 2018.
And both games feature the protagonist saying, boy.
Boy. You're right.
Because Kratos says it all the time for the kid, but when you maximize your bond with a male horse in this game, Arthur, when you get him, will go, boy. Hey, boy. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. It's just dad gaming top to bottom this year.
It is.
One of my other picks for this category would have been the Shadow of the Colossus remake, which I like a lot, but it's a remake, so I didn't really want to.
Yeah, I tend to try to favor new, original games.
Shadow of the Colossus is my favorite game of all time,
so
obviously, but it's just it is a really good remake, but it's still just a remake.
It's the same game, yeah.
And credit to them for it being the same game for a ground-up remake, but I didn't think that counted.
Yeah, I always try to reward games that are new because to me, that game got its due back when it came out.
And who would have thought that God of War would feel so new?
No, I know. Next up, best strategy game. This category we did not have 2 years ago, but we did have last year, and it's coming back this year. Matt, what's your pick?
I found this category a little light on the ground this year.
Yeah,
but
there's all those XCOM clones coming now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we got Mutant. What was that? Mutant
Year Zero.
Yeah.
The furries.
Right.
XCOM. Yeah.
Like a weird cross between furries and Beyond Good and Evil.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of indie studios start to emulate that XCOM template.
Yeah. It's a good template.
It is, absolutely.
But my pick for this ends up being BattleTech. Partly because I'm a BattleTech fan from way back, but also, and I think if we talked about it on the show and I'd only played a couple missions and I'd gotten stuck on a bug and had to redo 30 minutes of a mission, I was a little irritated with it at the time.
Yeah.
But I did go back and play it once they'd sort of they'd done some patching. It'd been a while. I wasn't as mad at it anymore, and I got through most of, like 2/3 of it, I would say, and I really dig it. I think I'm a big fan of giant robots in general. I'm a fan of BattleTech in particular. I can't wait for the new action-based MechWarrior game that's coming. But I thought this really nailed it. It felt, because it's pretty easy to do like kind of a giant robot strategy game. It is in the XCOM vein, I would say, using kind of the pseudo real-time motion thing, and like choosing your target in first person here. You can see, and then it calculates stuff. But it'd be really easy to just sort of do a standard sort of giant robots running around in XCOM, plug giant robots into XCOM and call it a day. But they really model all the systems that make BattleTech really well, with the heat, building heat with weaponry and using heat as a weapon, and also, do you want to fire all these weapons on this turn because you'll raise your heat up and the heat will go back down the next turn, but if someone else hits you with like a flamer or something, then that's going to overheat you and it's going to ruin your whole strategy. And it's all there. And it never got dull to me. I think they've done a good job with their expansion packs that are coming up. They seem to be on board to support it all the way through to the end of next year. And it was just nice to see BattleTech kind of come back in style after spending so long either dormant or as sort of a slightly decent online free-to-play game for so long. I enjoyed it a lot.
All right, my pick for best strategy game of 2018 is Into the Breach.
More giant robots.
More giant robots. Probably the thing that made this game resonate the most with me is that it reminds me a lot of Advance Wars, although I like Advance Wars more. And the reason I like Advance Wars more is because it doesn't have that roguelike crap.
Right.
That, to me, was the biggest stumbling block with this game. I hate permadeath. I hate the roguelite stuff. But with this game, I managed to fight through it. It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's definitely one of the more challenging games that I played this year that wasn't an action game. But I also to be perfectly honest, I did not play a ton of strategy games this year.
Yeah.
So I had like 3 or 4 games that I actually played that I could choose from, and this was the one I've had the most fun with. The other thing I like about it, though, is because it has that permadeath element to it, they've really streamlined the game. Like you were talking about BattleTech, you're talking about like, overheating and all that stuff. That minutia that a lot of people love about strategy, I hate it. Like I prefer the more streamlined, simple, being able to know what to expect during a turn so that you can be a little more strategic about mapping out your future turns. And this game is great for that. I also I like the style of the game. I like the music in the game. Again, because it gave me that Advanced Wars vibe, which I'm a huge fan of. It was an easy pick for me of the games I've played for best strategy game of 2018.
It's kind of a puzzle game at times.
Yeah, I mean, but aren't all grid-based strategy games kind of?
This one felt more to me like sometimes we're like, oh, if I can just make the right move, it'll all sort of
fall
cascade into
yeah,
place.
Yeah, like dominoes.
Yeah.
And it does sometimes.
Yeah.
And
sometimes it just screws you.
Yeah, but this game, you can tell that the developers who worked on this spent a lot of time thinking about that kind of stuff, though. Like, if thinking about sort of those cascading actions, and if you do this, then this domino falls, it knocks into this domino. And that was one of a feeling that I got while playing this game that I haven't got from playing a strategy game in quite a while. So I enjoyed my time with it. It's not one of my favorite games of 2018, but it's my favorite strategy game of 2018.
An important distinction.
Very important, absolutely.
Hurry up, 2019. Bring me some Fire Emblem.
Yeah, it should be coming. Next up is Best Fighting Game. Pretty good year for fighting games.
Yeah.
Not amazing, not a ton of releases. Fighting games are turning into games as a service.
Yeah.
So their lives are lasting far longer than they used to in the past.
I would actually have thought about Street Fighter V as a candidate for kind of an ongoing game award until they did what they did in the last few weeks.
Right. Put ads in a game that you pay for?
Put ads during as you load the match. And they added costumes. I didn't even know this till I loaded it up during the Capcom Cup. I didn't know they'd put costumes in where they've just slapped Capcom Cup was it Sterling that put out that one of Dalsim's places for the ad is on one of his skulls on his necklace?
Are you kidding me?
He's got the 3 skulls.
Yeah.
The middle skull has the Capcom Tour logo slapped on the forehead, and I'm like, really? At some point, it's Sprite gonna be in there?
Yeah, Crisco gonna be on it probably will.
And you get Fight money for the in-game currency for using them a tiny bit at a time. It's just so tacky.
It's bad.
Bad. But yeah, so on one hand, it's some good fighting games came out. On the other hand, fighting games continue to be slightly embarrassing at times.
Like SNK Heroine's Tag Team Frenzy?
Yeah,
remember when we talked about that on the show?
Vaguely.
That game made me sad to be a gamer. I was like, I don't want people to associate me with this game ever. And I think that's kind of where we are with fighting games, but there has been a couple good ones. Mm-hmm. So what is your pick for the best fighting game?
My pick is, honestly, I think there's really only one pick this year for that, and it's Dragon Ball FighterZ.
I
don't even like Dragon Ball. I was a little too old when Dragon Ball made it over here.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball seems to be something you really need to see between the ages of 8 and 12.
Yep.
Judging by our friend Corrado, who did see it at that age when he was growing up in Italy, because they did air it over there, and he loves it to this day.
Still,
and I saw it when I was 21, because we would run it in the game store I managed at the time. And I thought it was the most boring garbage I had ever seen. Because the owner's grandchildren loved it, and they were 8.
Yeah.
That's it. And but he refused to deal with it, so he'd send him. He owned the record store it was attached to, so he'd send them back to our section, and he'd say, "You watch it with him because I don't want to see that crap." And I was like, "Fair enough,
I get it.
So I have zero love for Dragon Ball, but this game is amazing.
Yeah.
It is more or less a take on the Marvel vs. Capcom sort of tag fighter thing.
What's that mean? Its Arc System works.
Yeah, it's the BlazBlue guys.
That's their template.
It's their thing.
Yeah.
But they nailed the property so well.
They did.
That it's hard to sometimes see it as a polygonal game.
Yeah,
The art style is so good.
It is, yeah.
And I think it's blown up in the tournament scene. It was the #1
most watched at Evo,
most
right?
watched at Evo, and I think the #1 sign up for Evo.
Yeah.
Which I don't think anyone thought someone could beat Street Fighter at that.
Yep.
And for some reason it's not part of Evo Japan.
Yeah, it's weird.
The
games they chose for Evo Japan are weird.
A little odd.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if part of that is because sort of
the new Smash isn't
the
there
Marvel
either.
tag battle style of game has always been more of a U.S. like Western thing.
Yeah.
That caught on more in the West than in Japan. But I've been watching the tournaments. I haven't played a ton of fighters. Just because I played enough to sort of familiarize myself with it, but I still run into that problem of I don't know who any of these people are.
I reviewed the game and I don't know who any of them are either.
But watching the tournaments, it's even with no attachment to that, it's a fascinating game to watch and it's entertaining, especially once people start branching out outside of the everybody picks the same 2 characters and then one character they like.
Right. Yeah.
Just sort of how the early teams in these games go.
Yeah.
But I've enjoyed watching it all year, and it's clearly better in almost every respect than I ever would have thought a Dragon Ball fighting game ever would be.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for the people that do love Dragon Ball that finally got a game that does justice to what they love. And I think it's the success story of the genre for the year, no question.
Yeah, I have a nephew who loves Dragon Ball, so I could totally relate. And of course, he was right in that age group. He started watching it when he was like 8, 10 years old, and he still loves it today. And like you, I am not a big Dragon Ball fan, and therefore my pick for best fighting game of 2018. It may surprise some people. Is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I was not excited for this game really at all. I just really didn't have a ton of interest in playing it, and then I got it. And I have been consistently playing it ever since. And I'll tell you what really changed my perspective on this game was playing it with other sifters. When we did that stream, and I was playing with 3 other sifters, that changed my perspective on this game. And once I started enjoying playing it, then I started digging in and playing all the other modes. And I think, a lot of ways, Smash Bros. Ultimate and Dragon Ball FighterZ are kind of similar games because they're really just like reskinned versions of an older game. Arc System...
A bit more literally in Smash Brothers' case. But
is it?
Yeah. I mean, it there's a feeling of Marvel to it, but I mean, Arc System Works came up with their own combo systems, and the skill of one doesn't necessarily translate to the other. At least it didn't for me.
Yeah.
Whereas Smash Brothers is more or less the same thing. The main thing that soured me on Smash Brothers is some of those later character unlocks are a pain, or they were. I think they patched it. So
I haven't even got to that yet.
But like the last 4 guys, I was ready to kill whoever invented Star Fox. It was like
you're not alone in that though. That's been
couldn't touch him.
Common complaint is that the last few characters are
Yeah.
almost impossible to unlock. I'm not even there yet. I've still got tons of characters left to unlock. I've just been exploring the astounding breadth of this game. I don't know if I would go so far as to say it's like the most robust fighting game ever, because I think as long as NetherRealm is in the discussion, that's not going to be an accurate statement. But aside from NetherRealm's games, this game is just monstrous. Like, there is so much to do, and I get that people may not like some of it. Like, I'm not a huge fan of some of the single-player content, but if you don't like it, you just do something else. There's just so much on offer. It's the ultimate version of this franchise. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see another one, to be perfectly honest with you.
It does feel like this would be a good way to just sort of, just don't make another Smash Brothers. Just continually port this one forward and add to it.
Yeah, and as you get a 4K console, just up-res the graphics to 4K and we'll be good. So, I had a lot more. I love Dragon Ball FighterZ. I was really high on it earlier in the year, but I've had more fun playing Smash Brothers than I did FighterZ. And Smash Brothers, even though you're right, this is like a reskin Smash Brothers, there's still only one Smash Brothers. And we get this game once every 7 or 8 years. Tag-style fighting games, to me, we get them at least one per year every year. And Arc System Works, I think itself puts out pretty much one fighting game per year with a tag system.
I don't think they really do.
I mean, BlazBlue, there's what, 4 of them now?
Yeah, but BlazBlue isn't a tag game. It's a straight 101 fighter.
No, you're right.
They did put out a that one tag battle game that was like Blaze Blue and a bunch of other anime shit I've never
Cross
never
tag
heard of.
battle, right?
Yeah. Like that was a big crossover between a bunch of properties I don't really have much familiarity with other than Blaze Blue.
Yeah.
Blaze Blue also...
And really, Fighters is the reskin of tag battle.
A little bit, yeah.
But look, you're splitting hairs here. Both of those fighting games are great. I just enjoy my time with Smash Brothers a little bit more, and so it gets my nod. You can't go wrong with either one, though.
Yeah, I've also been impressed as we've played more of it since, because I think I only had a few hours with it when we talked about it before. I'm really impressed by how good Simon is.
Yeah.
I think Simon, the Belmont turned out real well.
Until they nerf him.
Yeah, until then. But for now, like he's a great zoning character, and that's my kind of style. So I've been having actually a really good time playing Simon. Like they did not half-ass for once. In I don't know how long, we got a Castlevania thing that was not half-assed.
Yeah, because Konami had very little to do with it.
Yeah.
That's exactly why. I guarantee it. All right, let's move on to Best Driving Game. This is another category where Matt and I have chosen the same winner, and I know you guys can guess what it is right now, but we'll tell you anyway. Forza Horizon 4. Without a doubt. But here's what I would say. It's the obvious pick. Far and away the best driving game of 2018. Not even close. But I feel like this year the genre was revived a little bit. We got a couple franchises that were not particularly polished, not particularly big, but they had unique concepts that I hope will be things that other developers will look at and either improve upon or emulate going forward. And that game was Onrush, which has a very unique take on online multiplayer racing. And I feel criminally underrated and criminally underpurchased. And then
you're an advocate party of one for that game. I haven't seen anyone else mention that game.
I know, but they should.
Not even in an awards category. I mean, like no one noticed.
You can probably find it for like $20 or $30. Sam, did you say you saw it for cheap?
It's free.
Oh, it's free? Onrush?
Yeah.
Where?
PSN.
Is it this
it's PlayStation Plus this month.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe a lot of you guys are experiencing it. I really enjoyed that game, something different. And then there's Trailblazers, which was another completely flip everything on its head racing game where you actually had a teammate that you raced with as you played. Both of those games were a little rough around the edges. Trailblazers far more than Onrush. But I just wanted to point out that the racing genre, which sometimes we don't even have in these awards. In fact, last year we didn't have it in these awards. Mm-hmm. We have it this year, and for good reason, because there are some developers out there that are really pushing the envelope on the genre and trying to do some stuff that's new. Now, let's talk about Forza Horizon 4 and why it's the best driving game of the year. What is it about it that sets it apart for you, Matt?
I think it's mainly the scope and the variety of what you can drive, and the way they sort of mix in like some kind of it's been described as a car PG.
Yeah.
And I think the other games also I've lost some interest after I collected all the bonus boards and sort of did the basic the showcases and sort of. This one kept me playing a lot longer, even after I'd gotten the bonus board stuff, even after I'd seen all the seasons, even after I'd been through a few rotations of the various showcases and various stunt things. It kept me playing in the sense that I think the England setting is a lot of fun to drive through. And it kept me playing with the co-op events, and it kept me playing with the sort of the way the seasons change over every however many days, like 5 days or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it would give you a new set of challenges with a bunch of decent rewards.
Yeah.
They like I said before about the multiplayer, but I think it extends beyond that. I think they finally nailed their own formula this time.
Yeah.
And it all just sings.
This is another game that's very well paced.
Yes.
If you want to just stay on the main breadcrumb trail, you can, and it's fun and engaging and varied, and you're never spending too much time doing something you don't like. There's always something that you will like right around the corner. And again, like you said, the scope and the scale, the weather. It is, to me, this is the game that they've been trying to make all along. They finally got to the perfect zenith of their tools, their expertise, and the hardware available to make it on. Mm-hmm. And to me, I mean, I try to stay away from hyperbole, but this is probably my favorite driving game of the generation.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's a big statement.
I would say the best soundtrack since the first one.
Yeah, I mean, all their soundtracks are great.
They're all right, but this one, I think they stepped it up a bit on this one.
Yeah.
I've liked 2 and 3's soundtrack, but I've always had like my favorite was always Horizon 1 soundtrack, and this one I think might have finally eclipsed that.
The irony is that they moved away from the music festival thing.
Yeah.
And now you feel like it has the best soundtrack ever.
That's also a good point. They move further away from the ridiculous kind of
Dude bro-y
dude
crap,
like Burning Man with cars nonsense, and it's like they made it more of like a media event almost.
It makes more sense.
Yeah, it feels more like something that could happen.
Right.
Outside of the cops have all been removed from the country apparently.
But Forza Horizon 4, I don't think either one of us could say enough good things about it. If you don't have it yet, go freaking buy it. Ask for it for Christmas. It is a great driving game that will last you for a really, really
especially
long
if
time.
you have an Xbox One X.
Oh yeah,
damn.
Get ready to be blown away. Up next is another new category for this year's awards, and something that we finally relented on after
like a mere hours ago.
Yeah, I've been fighting it internally for a couple of weeks, though, in all honesty. And I fought it last year before we did the awards, but finally we are going to give an award for the best game as a service. There's going against the grain, and then there's just being stupid. And I think if we wouldn't have addressed this category this year, we would just be being stupid. So we probably should establish what that means. So it has to be a game that I would say has been out for at least a year. Because is a game really a service until it's been out for a year?
Yeah, like you got to make sure it goes the distance, I guess.
Right. And so that's kind of what I set up as our parameters for this category. Matt,
it has to be something basically continually updated, continually gives you new content,
yep,
et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. So Matt, what's your pick for the best game as a service for 2018?
Well, this might just be me, but I'm picking No Man's Sky. Because these guys, Hello Games, had a rocky start with certain segments of the population. Didn't stop me from playing 150 hours of the damn thing.
Yeah.
But they have consistently, they went dark for a while, and then after that, they have consistently continued to put out, substantial, large updates that change how the game plays, that add tons of ways to play with the game, that revolutionize sort of how basic elements and basic aspects of the game even work a couple of times, and it's all free. Yep. And it just rolls out, and they don't waste any time. They put a trailer out, it's out a few days later, they're still doing it, it's still going, and it looks like they've kind of found their feet. If they're publishing that. What's that other game that they announced at the Game Awards? This little micro game that like two of their guys made.
Hello Games?
Hello Games.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, we talked about it. It was I can't remember what it's called now. But it was like one of those little indie game where the little like wizard looking dude gets lost and they has to find his way back. He's in the boat and he's going down the river, kind of in a cave. You remember that at all?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't remember it at all.
It's
interesting.
They're publishing it by two of their guys. It's like a micro game by two of their guys. So they're sort of finally putting out their second game. But
when your first is that ambitious, I'll give you a pass.
But I think even as someone who always liked this game, it is a completely different game now, and it's a much, much better game.
Yep.
They have realized all the things that they either hinted at or misled people over, in the run-up to the release of the game. You can play multiplayer now. You can do almost anything you can think of. They've made, changed the biomes. There's a whole underwater thing they've added recently where, like, now all of a sudden there's, like, totally different creatures underwater. You build underwater bases instead of glitching underwater bases, which didn't work too well all the time. It's no Subnautica, but it's there.
Yeah.
They've added new storylines, and it just keeps going and keeps getting bigger and keeps getting better. And
real multiplayer.
I
mean, that's really the big thing for most people, because that's what people were disappointed the game didn't have.
Yep.
And they went above and beyond what they were even promised ultimately. So, kudos.
So they, in the end, they made good.
In fact, I mean, kudos to that studio in general.
Yeah.
I mean, it fought through angry internet mobs, which is no easy task, to stay on task, motivated, the amount of work that they've got done after the reception this game got initially is astounding.
Yep, and we're 2.5 years out now. And there's
Right.
still
Lesser people would have folded the tent and gone home after what they went through, but they did not. They stayed and persevered, and the result is an amazing game.
Yep.
It started as a great game, and now it's an amazing game.
Yeah, I think if you've avoided this or haven't touched it since like August 2016, you might be
You're in
pleasantly
for
surprised.
a big surprise. Absolutely. Okay, my pick for best game as a service, and I have to say, this category, I had to think probably fifth longest of any of the other categories to try to figure out which game, because part of it too is that I have been going back and playing some of these games as a service. We launched a show called Service Call that's all about that, and while we've only published one episode of that, I've actually done the research for 2 other episodes, so I've kind of gone back and played some of these other games as a service. And my winner is Fortnite. And I think one thing we should keep in mind is me giving this category to Fortnite isn't because I think Fortnite is the best game that's a game as a service. The way I looked at this category was, what is the game that is doing that service the most justice? What is using... Which game is
killing it?
Right, killing it in that way. And to me, when I started looking at it, like, Fortnite's just destroying everyone. Like, the only other game that I saw that kind of came close as far as dedication was Overwatch. But Fortnite, the stuff that they do in Fortnite to keep people hooked into their seasons is amazing. Mm-hmm. They have these strange events that happen. And somebody always manages to catch it on video, and then that video goes on YouTube, and then the whole community starts freaking out. What could it be?
Yeah, it's like they leverage kind of the idea of like an alternate reality game, like an ARG, to keep the community interested in talking to each other.
And then the crazy part is they pay it all off.
Yeah, and then something actually happens as a result.
And it's like a thing. So everybody puts their guns down, and they all stand around completely passive and watch the next season kick off, essentially, without knowing 100% what it's going to be about and what are the details of it. And look, you get all the other stuff you get in every other game as a service, with new weapons and skins and emotes and all that kind of stuff, and they're very good at that as well, I should add. Mm-hmm. But really, it's the marketing of its new content. And it's not just about, like, internet ads or advertisements on TV. It's in-game marketing. You're exposing little clues to your audience. Your fans are rabid fans, and they're taking those clues and they're running with them, and there's conspiracy theories flying around, and then ultimately a trailer will come out that'll kind of tease it a little bit, and people are like, oh, we're on the right path. They are just masters of, I don't want to say manipulating their fan base, but they are. I mean, honestly, they're messing with, like, the expectations and the emotions of the players, but in a way that the players don't ultimately feel like they're being manipulated. They're happy about it. They enjoy these wild goose chases, these breadcrumb trails that Epic has put down for them. So I think if I was going to launch a game as a service, I would look at what Epic is doing with Fortnite, and I would, while I maybe not emulate that model 100%, I would certainly at least take it to heart. So for me, best game as a service in 2018, Fortnite. All right, let's move on. This is an old standby, but the one that always generates the most discussion in the comments after this episode, inevitably, other than maybe Game of the Year, and that is best platform. So best platform, it means the best console or PC or mobile or VR, whatever, just the best platform for 2018, and generally that means which platform had the best games, and even more importantly, usually, the best exclusive games. And so, Matt, you and I have chose the same winner this year.
For once.
And the winner for best platform is PlayStation 4. I've chosen PlayStation 4, I think, every year we've done this award.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've gone PC a couple of times.
Yeah, but here's the first thing I would say after getting ready for these awards is that 2018 is a joke compared to 2017. 2017, we talked about it at the end of last year, that we thought it was one of the best years of gaming ever. And I think now that we're done with 2018, it's all the more obvious just how amazing last year was. Because we're no less in the sweet spot of Generation 8 now. We're still in that same spot, but the games that came out last year compared to the games that came out this year, no comparison. Last year was far, far better in just about any way you want to chop it up.
Certainly in terms of volume.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, the volume of quality releases just dwarfs this year. And this was a great year as well. But when you start really kind of cutting it to the quick and saying, okay, let's look at each platform individually, again, to me, it was very easy that the PlayStation 4 is the winner. God of War, Spider-Man. There's 2 exclusives that I would say are in the top 4 or 5 games of the year for everybody. And you have 2 exclusives that are sitting in there. That in itself puts it over the top for me. I'm sure there's going to be Nintendo fans. They're going to say, but look at what the Switch had. It had more. It did have more. I think it had more exclusive first-party games than PS4.
Yeah, it just didn't have as many I cared about.
Yeah, it just didn't have as many good ones.
Yeah.
It may have had more, but I can't think of a single game for Switch that came out this year that's better than Spider-Man or God of War. So, and then you start to
very
factor
angry Pokemon fan out
Yeah,
there
I know,
somewhere.
but it's just the truth. And then you start to factor in, the length of those games. In addition, to me, it makes a PlayStation 4 clear winner. And then you have all the other stuff that's going on behind the scenes with PlayStation, with the exclusive DLC deals, with games like Call of Duty. A lot of indies are starting to change. It used to be that all the indies came to PS4 first. That we saw a shift in focus this year. A lot of games are starting to come out for Switch first. But if they're not coming out for Switch first, they are coming out for PS4 first. When you take into consideration PlayStation VR, without PlayStation 4, there is no PlayStation VR. So, by extension, PlayStation VR is a part of PlayStation 4. And to me, the best HMD on the market this year as well for VR. So, it's been another great year for Sony, both first party and, they had third party exclusives as well, which other platforms don't really get anymore. So, it's the PlayStation at this point, PlayStation 4, is like a snowball rolling downhill. It's so big that people are going to keep piling on, and the snowball is just going to get bigger and bigger until it gets to the bottom, and eventually it crashes when they launch a PlayStation 5. I don't know what a platform would have to do at this point to dethrone PlayStation 4, but I think maybe next year we'll get a vague idea of it. At least I think we will.
Possibly. If Sony decides to come out of its cave.
Yeah. So you're saying like PlayStation 5. But I'm saying maybe next year, Switch or Xbox, with all the studios that Microsoft has purchased, maybe there's a chance.
Microsoft has some momentum. The NPD today said that for the first time in either for a long time or forever, all 3 consoles sold over 1.3 million units in November. The fact that
That's
Xbox, Switch and PlayStation, that's not super shocking. But the fact that Xbox sold that much, that's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah.
That's a turnaround. It's not going to let them catch the Switch or the PS4, but that's a much healthier Xbox than I expected to see this generation.
That's a healthy industry.
Yeah.
I love seeing that. I would honestly be most happy if all 3 consoles sold exactly the same. Wouldn't that be great?
It would be really hard to argue online, though.
Exactly. That's why. That's why it would be so awesome. Nobody can make arguments about this is better or this is worse. Everybody could just enjoy video games for what they are, the best entertainment medium on the planet, instead of being, oh, well, my favorite company doesn't make that, then that's trash. It's so dumb.
Well, interesting to see what Sony has next year.
Well, they'll have Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us Part 2.
Will they?
They should.
Will they?
They should.
They
Death
should.
Stranding.
I would certainly like to play Ghost of Tsushima. But will they?
I think so.
What about the first half? All we get the first half of the year is Days Gone?
Yeah. But those other 3 are pretty big.
They are, but it's just weird. It's like we got God of War for the first quarter last year and this year, and now we're going to have to play, bikers.
Yeah.
It's
And
just
then, and then for this year, even if you look at some of the games that you and I personally don't care about, but a lot of people do, like Detroit. A lot of people really like that game. I didn't care for it. You didn't care for it, but a lot of people did, and it sold really well. And I think a lot of people look at games like that as that's their filler game in between big AAA, but yet it's still really high quality and a little bit different and unique. I think PS4 clear winner this year.
Yeah. I feel like everything's a question mark next year in terms of that.
It's exciting.
Yeah, could go anywhere.
It's good to not know what's going to happen, I think.
I think I will not roll out giving it to Switch next year if Metroid Prime 4 comes out and B doesn't piss me off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be next year seems like the first time in a long time that this category is going to end up being a real
Because you're going to
fight.
have the legit new Pokemon RPG on Switch next year.
And, presumably Microsoft will release something.
Maybe.
Once they get maybe Crackdown 3 is the thing that's clogging all the works up. And once Crackdown 3 comes out, it'll
The
just be
dam's gonna break.
a flood of amazing titles. That'll be
If that's the case, Crackdown 3 better be damn good. That's all I got to say.
Gears Funko Pop is just going to sweep.
Gears 5 should be here next year.
Yeah. Should be a big Gears year next year.
Yeah.
Year.
Next up, best story. On SIFTD, I have story ratings set pretty much at the bottom, so you guys know that I am not a big proponent of story in games. It's not
Mine's
that I'm
at
not
like
a proponent.
9.
Yeah, I know.
Mine's
We're
way
that
up.
why we're different. That's why the show's good, though. Is because we have different tastes in games. So yours is 9. Mine's like a 1 or a 2. So story isn't the most important thing for me in video games. Gameplay generally is, but it is important in general. Matt, what is your pick for the best story of 2018?
My pick for best story is God of War.
That's a good pick.
Again, in part for reasons I can't discuss on the show because it's endgame spoilers.
Right.
But I really liked what they did with Kratos as a character. I was impressed they did not make the child annoying. I liked all the various characters. Right when you're kind of getting a little accustomed to the Kratos-Atreus relationship, they bring in a disembodied head that cracks wise constantly in a Scottish accent, and that's great. That's always, more
I had
disembodied.
completely forgotten about that
More
character.
severed Scottish heads, please, in video games. All the characters are fairly memorable, I think, for the most part. Like they kept the cast pretty small.
Yeah.
For the most part, I think that was a good call. I think they can expand it out larger next time, but like they really focused the story on these two characters and their relationship, and that worked very well. And I think the incorporation of Norse mythology was a big success, and the revelations at the end of the game put a lot of those ideas of character and setting. They throw them into a different light. And it proved to me that they really had thought through what they were doing and why they were doing it and why they were doing what they were doing with Kratos in particular. Like the point of Kratos' motivation and story and goals in this story, and what you learn at the end of the story kind of throws a lot of that in a different light, and in a way that I don't think Kratos realizes, which makes it kind of tragic.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And something that doesn't really get a lot of credit for because nobody wants to talk about the ending, because everybody wants everyone to see the ending on their own, which you should.
Yeah.
But I thought as a complete narrative package, no other game did it as well as God of War did this year.
Now you guys know how I feel about God of War story. Obviously, with some of the stuff I've had in my personal life over the last year and a half, 2 years.
Boy.
Exactly. Definitely resonated with me on probably a different level than for a lot of other people, but it did not win Story of the Year for me. My pick for the best story of 2018 is Red Dead Redemption 2. And for Red Dead to beat God of War, knowing my personal situation and how I could potentially relate to the story of God of War, that should show you how strongly I feel about the story in Red Dead Redemption 2. I remember when they first started showing some screenshots and showed the first trailer for this, and they showed the whole gang, and I was like, damn, that gang is gigantic. And I wondered, like you were talking about with God of War, how they kept the cast small. And you managed to know everybody and relate to everybody and kind of understand where everyone was coming from and how they relate to everybody else in the story. And that, to me, is what's most impressive about Red Dead Redemption 2, is that this gang is gigantic. And yet I managed to get to know every single one of them, I felt, on a pretty intimate level, to where I knew what their motivations were. At least I thought I knew whether I could trust them or not. I thought I knew whether they were out for themselves or out for the gang. I learned the ones that were really stupid and you couldn't trust to send out on certain missions. That's tough to do. To introduce that many characters and create an entertainment product where the person who experiences it feels like they know each and every one of them intimately, that's no small feat. And then you start talking about the overarching plot, which to me is very interesting. Probably a little cliche for westerns.
That's where you said.
I mean, on the run from the law.
Yeah, I mean, you said about God of War earlier that it's paced perfectly throughout.
Yeah.
That's where Red Dead Redemption 2 loses me.
No, you're right.
Is the middle is a big saggy thing where you just. Yes, I know we need one more big job, Dutch, but I have $20,000 in my pocket. If you would like to just go now, How much do we need? Because I'm rolling in it. You have any idea how many cougars I've killed?
Yeah. You're right, and that is kind of a problem with games that are really long like that. It's hard to sustain the plausibility of them.
Well, especially because Rockstar in general just sort of makes a decision like, our story and our mission design is going to be this, and no matter what you do otherwise, we're just going to ignore that element.
Reality.
Which, on one hand, it's like, yeah, that's the simplest way to solve that problem. On the other hand, you're Rockstar, and you should probably come up with a new idea sometime.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
So I think Red Dead might actually have the best writing of the year.
I think that without a doubt.
I mean, just like moment-to-moment character work, I think is exceptional in this game. Like you said, I have an opinion and a relationship with every character in that camp.
And there's a lot of characters.
I can remember
in that camp.
particular personality quirks of individual sheriffs in the different towns. You know, like they make all the people in the game really memorable, and that's very hard to do.
Yeah, just even think about the guys who work the counter at the train stations. Yeah. Everyone you run into in this game, you remember them.
Or there's one general store I don't like to go in because I think the guy who works there is a jerk.
Yeah.
And he always says something weird or creepy to Arthur.
So you're like, I just won't go in there.
I'm like, no, I'll just buy it over here. It's just but I think narratively, in terms of kind of the overarching thing, it sags in the sense
it absolutely
that,
does in the middle. Without it, I would
maybe there's no way around that because of the story they're trying to tell, but
or the length of the game that they made. I don't know if it's possible to sustain a story for 100 hours.
Because the other standard solution is to basically railroad you into doing a certain number of missions before you're let loose on the world again, and that's really annoying.
Yep.
So in the end, I'd prefer you let the story sag a bit in the name of letting me play how I want to play.
Yeah, and while the story overall was kind of cliche for westerns, it still was good and interesting.
Yeah, and also I think the second half of the story kind of requires you to set those cliches in motion to begin with, because you have to sort of pay them off in what happens later on. So
and
I understand what they're after there.
And part of that middle drag, which I agree 1,000% is absolutely there, I think that actually sets the player up a little bit for what's to come later on, because
it does lull you a little bit, yeah.
But I think it's a reflection of the lead character in the game.
Yeah.
Because that's what, to me, it's like, that's what it's going to take for him to get to the place he eventually gets to. It's hard to talk about this without spoiling anything.
Right.
But I felt like he needed that just getting beat over the head over and over with the same crap before he finally wakes up and is like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting element, because I see a lot of people complain about how, Arthur should have realized X, Y, and Z earlier than he did. And
but that's the whole story.
But he's
also brainwashed.
But
he's
also
completely delusional.
Well, he's also just not willing to believe certain things.
Yeah.
And
that's what delusion is.
But he's it's not delusion so much he's convinced himself something's not true. It's more that he won't allow himself to admit that he was wrong about something. And
sounds very familiar to the real world in 2018.
But there's sort of an element of and I do think it has somewhat of a lull that could have been handled in pacing a little better. But there is also an element where people are saying oh, Arthur didn't realize X, Y, and Z, and I didn't like that because he should have realized X, Y, and Z. Well, a character making a mistake doesn't equate to bad writing. If it's true to that,
that's called humanity.
If it's true to that character, well, yeah, but you'll see. I mean, that's what that Cinema Sins channel is all about. Is they call out sins where a character makes a mistake because they didn't think perfectly logically and they hadn't read the script.
Yeah.
And I think they earn, in the sense that I do find it annoying that we're hearing the same dialogue over and over again because of the way the game is written and one more big score on when I know what we're doing, Arthur. Da, 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 da. At the same time, I don't find it out of character for Arthur to not allow himself to recognize those things until he's forced to.
Yep.
That it's not bad writing. That's good writing.
Yep.
You know, like you make this event true to the character, and maybe a smarter person would have realized that sooner, or a person who saw things more clearly. But that's not Arthur.
That's not him. He's not
No.
smart.
No.
He's had to be a criminal to survive.
And he would be the first one
smart.
to admit that.
Exactly. And that's the other thing,
He's
too, I love.
self-aware.
That's the other thing I love about the
yeah.
story in this. He is completely aware of himself and
Yeah.
how he's being manipulated by these other forces. And he has that internal struggle inside himself of like, I know this is a bad idea. I know this is dumb, but this is what I know, and I don't know no better. Like, it's... I don't know. I really love the story in this game, and you're right. It does burn real slow in the middle. But I think at least a little bit of that downtime was needed to kind of set up what ultimately happens in the final
And it is also
act.
true to its source material. If you go
Yeah.
back and watch something like Once Upon a Time in the West,
Yeah.
it's not a rollicking thrill ride.
No.
So what they're going for is what they got. But I feel like the tightness of God of War put it a smidgen above. Although if you were saying like best dialogue writing, I would probably give that to Red Dead, no question.
You can't go wrong with either one of those picks.
No.
We were right, Matt.
In a real strong story year too.
It is,
like
yeah.
Spider-Man was in there too.
Yeah, absolutely in my consideration for this award. 100%. All right, let's move on next to Future Legend. So people sometimes get confused by this category. This is not like the game that we think. A lot of people confuse this with Game of the Year for whatever reason. But really what we're saying is what game from this year is still going to be played and talked about many years from now. A lot of times the best game of a given year isn't something people are going to be playing 5-6 years later. Sometimes they're just single player focused or whatever. There's millions of reasons why they wouldn't be. But this is the game that we think 10, 15, 20 years from now, people are still going to be talking about. So, Matt, what's your choice?
Well, the real choice is probably Fortnite, but that didn't come out this year.
Yeah.
So my pick is Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
I think 10 years down the line, people are still going to refer to this game. They're still going to talk about the characters in it. They're still going to talk about, the various game systems and stuff. I think at the very least, when they talk about Grand Theft Auto 6 back when that comes in, they're going to say, like, yeah, but that comes, that was a refinement of something that was in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
I think they're going to also talk about Red Dead Redemption 2 because 10 years from now is about when Red Dead Redemption 3 is going to come out. I think this game has made a big impression on kind of the psyches of people, of just about anybody who plays games, whether you love it or hate it. And I think people will reminisce about it and speculate about it and replay it and argue about it for years and years and years to come.
It is a Rockstar game.
And, especially with all the think pieces that went up about, like, do we need movies anymore? It's just like, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But good clickbait.
Yeah.
But like stuff like, that kind of thing where like it got
Yeah.
people that normally wouldn't pay attention to video games on the level of presentation and artwork.
Well, it's like I was saying, they're talking about it on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Right. Like, and Rockstar games do have a tendency to do that, but hey, we're still talking about Grand Theft Auto 5 too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I feel pretty confident that Red Dead Redemption will have some legs in the pop culture mind frame.
It will stand the test of time.
It ain't gonna be Avatar. Let's put it that way.
My pick for Future Legend is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And the big reason I agree with everything Matt said about Red Dead Redemption 2. However, I do think that hindsight will not be as very kind to Red Dead 2.
I agree with that.
I think
it's one of the reasons we're going to continue to be arguing about it years from
You're
now.
probably right. You're probably right. But I think a lot of people will forget about it after a while because I think a lot of people will never finish the game. And I think, two, a lot of people will start the game based upon a recommendation of a friend or the Metacritic scores or whatever and get, 10, 15 hours into it and be like, I get it. Like, that's enough.
Okay, Arthur. Boy.
And so, but you're right. Like, if I had a
my
runner-up,
favorite
it would
Arthur
be
line.
Red Dead. But I chose Super Smash Bros. Ultimate because, it's right in the title. It's the ultimate Smash Bros. Game. And
Well, it also ties into like what we've talked about, where like they'll just continue to use this as the platform
exactly.
for Smash Brothers.
Like, I think this is pretty much the last Smash Bros. Game. They may make a 4K version of this game eventually.
yeah,
but
Ultimate 4K, Ultimate Next,
right.
Ultimate, but this is going to be. I think you're never going to see another Smash Brothers game where they take some characters out, they take some stages out.
Yeah.
It's just, this is the new Smash Brothers, but it's not what it was. I think you are locked into every Smash Brothers from now on is all of this plus.
Yep, absolutely. And so it's a platform now, and I think not only are people going to be talking about it, they're still going to be playing
Literally
this
be
10
playing it
years
because
from now.
that's what it'll be. Yeah.
Yeah, so to me, I think Future Legend, I think this is going to be at EVO for the next however many years, and it's just going to be a thing for the next decade or more. So that's why it's my pick as Future Legend from 2018. Next up, here's a fun one. Most pleasant surprise. And this could be anything. This could be a news story, it could be a game, it could be an announcement, anything. Matt's, what's your pick for the most pleasant surprise from 2018?
My most pleasant surprise for 2018 was Starlink Battle for Atlas.
We have been advocates of that game here on the show.
You know, we knew it was going. They first talked about this like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it sort of disappeared, and then it resurfaced at E3.
Yep.
And I got my hands on it briefly, and I actually really liked how it played. And I'm a sucker for the Toys to Life thing anyway.
I believe you've convinced some people to buy this game.
Yeah. Plus the Star Fox integration, which was a nice, another pleasant surprise during the pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
Which I think we even said, like, oh, this is like Star Fox without Star Fox, and they're like, oh, and one
It's
more
better
thing.
than Star
I was like,
Fox.
what the hell? And then, you know, I played it. I thought it was, you know, it's repetitive but a lot of fun, and it's kind of exactly what I wanted out of it. The Star Fox bonus stuff makes it even better, and the fact that you can get a digital version of it that has, you know, all the DLC, you know, all the Toys to Life content digitally without spending $400 on the toys, awesome. I think they did that up right, and I enjoyed it top to bottom. And yeah, I mean, this kind of this, you know, the space shooter genre is something I miss from the old 90s days, the old TIE Fighter, X-Wing, Wing Commander era. And this scratched that itch real well, you know, by being sort of that arcade Star Fox idea, and not, you know, you can go play Elite Dangerous if you want something more simmy.
Yep.
But
no thanks.
this really did a good job. It had a nice little kind of semi-dynamic solar system thing going on, where like you know, you'd have the enemies taking over the planets if you ignore them too long. You have to go back and clear stuff and fight the boss battle again. I dug it. And I think
I liked the tone of the game too.
Yeah,
it was nice to play a game that wasn't so deathly serious for once. Like,
yeah, it kind of played like a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, it had levity to it, like a kind of, I wouldn't say tongue in cheek, but yeah, I mean, it also was a little Nintendo-ish in that I could see where kids would get completely sucked into the world, but also adults our age can play it and enjoy it. Obviously, the Switch version is a preferred version with the Star Fox stuff in it. And the other part of this too is that you can buy this game now for $40 with like the ship and like everything. Like the starter pack is now $40. It was started at like $75, and you can get it for $40 now. So
yeah, they've been putting this on some deep discount.
Yep.
Also on digitally as well. There were some good deals over Black Friday, and I bet they'll come back for Christmas.
Yep. So if you have had your eye on this game, you can get it now for cheap, and I have a feeling if you wait till after Christmas, you could probably get it even cheaper.
Probably.
So it might be one to keep an eye on for when you're ready to spend those gift cards that you are inevitably going to be given.
Yeah, the digital deluxe version that gives you like all the toys digitally is like $80.
Yeah.
You know, that's like the price of like 3 1/4 ships.
Yeah.
In real life, you know, the toys.
Yeah.
That is definitely the best deal. And you know, you don't really miss the ships when you're just switching around digitally. It's much faster.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I would never use the actual toys.
I did. I enjoyed it.
I would do it at first as like a novelty, but eventually, if you just have the stuff in there, there's no reason to keep.
Yeah, eventually, because like when you put the toys on, you unlock them digitally for like a week.
Yeah.
And I did find myself eventually just switching through the menus. It's
it's way easier. Kids, I can understand, would want to do it the other way. And then my pick for most pleasant surprise is a very similar game to Starlink, and that is No Man's Sky Next. I was completely taken off guard by these No Man's Sky updates. Matt's already talked about them extensively earlier, talking about the changes that have come to this game. Matt was a lot higher on No Man's Sky when it came out than I was. I think that's pretty well documented by the spirited discussion that we had over the game when it came out. And I'll tell you, if this were the game that we got back then, Matt and I would have had a very different conversation back then. And I honestly, after everything that happened with this game, my expectations were so low, not just for updates, but for anything. And I wouldn't have blamed them if they'd have just been like, you know what, screw it. We made our money.
Cut your losses.
We turn a profit
move
on
to
this.
the next thing.
Let's move on to... No, they didn't, though.
Nope.
They stuck with it and turned it into not only the game that I thought it was going to be all along, but something far better and greater. And to me, that is a huge surprise and a pleasant surprise because I wanted this game to be great all along. So it's a shame it didn't come out in this state. I feel like it would have, if you start talking about the future legends, this game might have had a chance to be one of those if it had come out in this state at launch.
I don't know. I feel like 10 years from now, you're still gonna mention No Man's Sky, and people are gonna be like, lying jerks.
Right.
I hate them.
Right? Oh, no.
Like people are still gonna be mad about it for indiscernible
Is that a future
reasons.
legend or is that something else?
I think people will still tell legends of Sean Murray, the lying monster who deceived children all around the world.
Yep, you're probably right.
And didn't let them play multiplayer in their space game.
Yep. But again, look, if you had No Man's Sky when it came out and you kind of fell off or didn't finish it, go back. All the updates are free. Download them. Take our word for it. I think you'll be glad that you did. Next up, another fun one. In fact, we're getting kind of into the fun categories now.
It's been a slog and terrible things up
Well,
till
no,
now,
it's just all been genres, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Now we're getting into some of the more odd categories. Next up, most disappointing game. No explanation needed for
Right.
this one.
So I think there's an obvious choice here, but I counted on you to make that one, and I picked The Crew 2.
Yeah, which is a good pick.
Which I was looking forward to because I did moderately enjoy The Crew 1, but that demo they put out just killed any inkling of buying this game for me.
I don't think it was just for you, Matt.
No, it doesn't seem like it, especially since I think it's 70% off right now.
Yeah, exactly. I
please-
think that demo was one of the biggest mistakes Ubisoft ever made.
Yeah, if that demo hadn't come out, I probably would have bought it sight unseen. And they'd have my $60, and that would be the end of it. But,
when someone asks us in a Q&A later on, when they'll be like, hey, when was one time where putting a demo out was a bad thing?
Yeah,
Now we will
this
have
one.
this to point to for those answers.
that was one of the few times I remember because I was playing it when we were setting up for the show, and periodically, even Sam would come in the room and be like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
what? Why? Why do you have to?" do
When
this?
Sam notices something, it's bad.
Usually he's just building cities.
Yeah, on his phone. Yeah. I agree with you. The Crew 2, huge disappointment. I mean, I drafted it in my fantasy league, so obviously
Yeah.
I
There were
thought it was going to be
expectations.
a lot better than it ultimately ended up being. I mean, it ultimately is worse than the first one?
Yeah, somehow.
How's that possible?
I think
it took
part
them
of it-
forever to get the first one to a good place.
Well, I think part of it is because they spread themselves too thin. It's like, okay, now you're gonna add boats, and you're gonna add motorcycles,
Yeah.
you're gonna add planes. Like, you barely got cars cars in the first game when the game launched, the cars drove like bricks of
They did.
margarine. They were just
Yeah.
nothing. Didn't feel like cars. They didn't feel like anything.
And they're going to triple down, Matt,
Yeah.
for the sequel. Good idea.
I love the idea of The Crew. I love the kind of this I don't know, kind of like shorthand map of the U.S. and
Yeah.
you can go all the major places.
It's like Cruising USA.
Yeah,
in
but
2018.
and I also just make a good racing game.
Start with the fundamentals.
Yeah,
Get the fundamentals right. Then start putting the icing on the cake.
yeah. Look at Forza Horizon is basically the same idea on a slightly smaller scale, but it's like and
Look,
this,
there we are, Matt.
Yeah, there we are. And this is also good. The Crew 2 is also a good example of the opposite of what I'm talking about, where you're talking about involving multiplayer in a smooth and
There's my
engaging
apartment.
way. The multiplayer in this game is weird and choppy and it doesn't integrate into the game well, and you're everything's competing on the leaderboards, or maybe you're you have to line up with these guys over here. Oh, now this guy's in your game for no good reason. He's just sort of trying to ram you while you're trying to do something else, but you can't because you're all you're intangible. But it's you can see he's trying to be a jerk. He just can't. It's just that I love the idea of kind of jumping all over the country and doing this thing, but it's it just doesn't feel good to play, for lack of a better description, and none of the things they want you to do are particularly interesting.
Yep. Agreed. My pick for most disappointing game, the one that Matt alluded to earlier, the low-hanging fruit, the easiest choice, Fallout 76.
Yeah. I still haven't played this, so that's the other reason I didn't pick
Right.
it.
Well, I have.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. It was funny, too. So we've fallen behind putting up Game Face on YouTube. My apologies, people on YouTube, if you get to see this. We've fallen behind. So one of the last episodes that we posted, I was trying to catch up last week, and I started posting old episodes to get up to speed. The last one was the episode where I said that I did not think Fallout 76 was that bad. And so everybody watching it, they're not checking when the show was originally recorded. They just think I'm insane. They're just like, oh my God, you think Fallout 76 is good? Like, you're crazy. You're an idiot. And I'm like, I know. I need to get those other episodes out where I apologize.
put a date stamp.
And I say I was wrong. Yeah, just put it like right on there. But they don't get it. So,
To be fair, I thought you were crazy when you said it.
yeah. But I'd only played like 3 or 4 hours of it. And honestly, the first 3 or 4 hours of this isn't bad. It's when the longer you play, the more glaringly obvious it becomes that it's a piece of crap.
Like a dawning horror
Yes,
kind of thing.
yes, absolutely. So I regret saying that I enjoyed the beta, even though I did really enjoy the beta because I only played it for a few hours. But once I dove into it more than that, that's when the cracks started to show. And because I was at one point really excited for this game, and it is Fallout, and I love the Fallout franchise, and I love Bethesda's games, and I mean, who could have seen this coming from Bethesda? Let's just be honest.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, it's Bethesda's games, the in-house stuff, not the stuff they publish, like id and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They do tend to have a pretty bug-ridden sort of like
they're always buggy
situation.
But the bugs aren't the problem.
But there's
with
usually
this.
something that you can look past sort of that because like the gameplay and what they have you doing and kind of the world they're immersing you in is so good. You sort of like deal with it. But none of that's here.
Yeah. It's not the bugs that make this terrible.
Doesn't help.
It's the lack of anything interesting to do.
Right.
I didn't have a ton of bugs in this, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just the game itself just isn't fun or interesting or varied enough or a million other...
We're talking about someone who like comes from this area.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the fact that it was set in West Virginia ultimately did little to nothing.
I mean, I can overlook some stuff to see something set in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
I even played a fair amount of Watch Dogs 2. Which that's some love for the San Francisco Bay right there.
Yep, absolutely.
To suffer through that game for any longer. I mean, better than Watch Dogs 1, but still.
Yeah.
You can only do so many drone races.
I think also in hindsight, I'm a little salty. I feel like, Bethesda took advantage of its fan base a little bit with this game, I think. And that's something that Bethesda typically never does. It's usually very respectful of its fans and its audience, but I almost feel like Bethesda was kind of backed into a corner where they were like, man, we don't have a big game for like the next, they were looking a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait, we need something in here. And they're like, okay, well, what
Rage
about
2
this?
wasn't going to make it.
Right.
So.
But that doesn't let them off the hook for
No.
this game at all.
I mean, I'm sure nobody sets out to make a bad game.
Right.
Other than the guys who sued Jim Sterling or whatever.
Right,
But
right.
but it's just, it's clearly not done baking. It's, not to go full Great British Bake Off on you, but it's underbaked, mate.
Yeah.
It's underproved.
And I don't even know if there's any way to save it, though. It is underbaked, but what do you do? What do you do now?
I mean, part of me wants to say that, look, if No Man's Sky can come back,
that's a good point.
you never know. There's a lot of work to be done here, but I don't think it's impossible. The question becomes, does Bethesda think it's worth doing that
Is it
work?
worth it to do it at
Or
this
is it
point?
better to just, cut your law? I mean, on the other hand, what else is this team doing?
Hopefully.
Because this is the Austin guys.
I don't know,
This is the former Battlecry
right,
team.
yeah. They're not finishing Battlecry, that's for sure.
Apparently not. But it's just sort of it feels like that thing. It's like that kind of. It has an element of to me, it has an element of day late and a dollar short that Battlecry also had, where there had to be kind of a moment where once Battlecry, you're working on Battlecry, and then Overwatch comes out. And you're like, oh my God, can we compete with that?
Right.
And then Battleborn is also out and is just going down in flames. And you're like, so this is the fate of someone that tries to compete with Overwatch, even if you're not directly trying to compete with Overwatch, which
absolutely.
Battleborn wasn't.
Yep.
But people got it in their heads that those two were kind of equivalents, and Battlecry was much more along the character shooter realm. And was there a moment where there's well, we just got to cut our losses. But I feel like this is like almost the same thing in terms of like a Fallout take on like survival games or the kind of stuff like DayZ or whatever. But it's not up to par either. It's you got to wonder like what's happening over there and what are they what are they not given enough time?
I hope this isn't a precursor of what's to come.
You mean like Starfield or whatever?
Or just Bethesda's games in general.
Well, I mean, this is not Bethesda. This is, I'm sure
their
Bethesda,
name's on it.
Their name is on it, but this is not the same team that's going to make Starfield and Elder
They were
Scrolls.
okay putting a game of this quality on the market.
Well, that doesn't mean they're going to make the same mistakes on their own, internal Bethesda Maryland team as opposed to the Austin team. But
I don't know. It's not a good harbinger of things to come, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, Starfield's interesting in the sense that it's going to be a new property from them for the first time in Fallout 3.
No, wait, a new property?
New property.
Dishonored, I think, was their last new property.
That's not this team though. I'm talking about
from that team. Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm talking about the guys who make Elder Scrolls and now Fallout. Not this Fallout.
I thought you were getting at like how would Bethesda launch a new IP? It hasn't done it for a long time.
I mean, like the guys who are the team that is famous for Skyrim and Fallout. Like, was the last original IP they did was Fallout 3. I mean, it's not original IP because they bought the IP, but it's the first new thing they made that wasn't Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
So that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So Starfield's going to be their first new IP or new offering that doesn't have a precedent from them in like 13 years.
In a long time. Yeah.
So you got to wonder what kind of new ideas they have. What are they going to?
Well,
Why?
they should have plenty.
You would think.
It's been so damn long. They should have more than they can shake a stick at. So,
but I think the big problem here is like Fallout 4 did not have tremendously good shooting and gunplay, and the compelling part is always the world and the characters and the stories that you find and are told in that world, and they basically took those out in favor of having a radio drama.
And then you see what's left.
Right.
Not much at all. Up next, biggest news story. This is always a fun category. This is always one of the harder ones to pick, too. One, because it's hard to go back and dig up all the big news stories. It's hard to find them.
And sometimes the big news stories turn out to not really be that big.
Yeah, they think it seems like they're big at first, but then 9 months later with the hindsight, it's like, oh, that really wasn't that big of a deal.
But I think we picked a couple of good ones that are going to continue to pay off as we go forward.
I believe so. What's your choice?
My choice is Sony pulling out of E3 2019.
Yep. Ripples.
Yeah, because we've been we and every other gaming podcast in existence routinely talks about like, is E3 dying?
Yeah.
Is E3 relevant anymore to the game industry?
Yeah.
And it's like for a long time my answer would be like, it's fine.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's there, right? It's happening. Now it's sort of like, well, talk to me in July, I guess. Like, I don't know. I'm very, very interested to see what Sony's absence, what the ripple effect is on that, what it makes other publishers think about, especially in light of Microsoft, minimizing their participation in terms of, and also EA and Activision already having pulled out at this point.
Because how does Nintendo look at this now? Is it like, is it going to say, hey, we have the whole show to ourselves? Or is it going to be like, hey, we're the only ones left here?
Don't be the last one out of the party,
right,
Nintendo.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if all the big three are gone, then what happens with the third-party guys?
Then you've just got E for all, and we know how that ended.
Pretty much. Yeah. Oh, it's a huge story. One of the big three completely pulling out of E3, gigantic story that will have repercussions. We'll be talking about this in 10 years. Remember when Sony left E3?
Yep.
I mean, depending on what happens after this, if they never come back or if they do come back and
here's
maybe the attendance drops by like half this year, like who knows?
Here's a question, I don't know if we know this or not. Obviously Sony's not going to have a presence at this. They're not going to do a press conference. They're not going to have a booth. Do you think Sony's people are going to go and do the usual meetings?
No.
Behind the closed doors meetings in terms of
look,
with retailers and like promotional stuff?
I think they'll be there. I think,
what E3 is for?
Right. I think they will do that. And I think that people like Scott Rhodey will be there talking to developers, trying to sign games exclusively to the platform. I think all that behind the scenes stuff that most of the people who are watching this never see will absolutely happen. It has to happen. You have to make business deals.
Yeah, because that's the core of E3.
Yeah.
And like I think
the people don't realize that.
Right,
They see the glamour and the glitz and the.
But moving forward, could we see as a result of this the glamour and the glitz contract to the point that it's just sort of a cursory nod in that direction, and the show becomes like any other industry expo, basically.
I mean, it becomes second fiddle to something like PAX at that point.
Yeah.
Probably. So,
or even the Game Awards.
Yeah, I mean, this could have huge repercussions on down the road. Definitely a great pick for biggest news story, without a doubt. My choice is a little different, but I don't think any less impactful. My choice for biggest news story is Epic launches a competitor to Steam. And a lot like Sony leaving E3, this is something that we don't have to wonder if it will have repercussions. It already had repercussions in less than a week. Already, so Epic undercuts Steam by only charging a 12% revenue split or cut. 3 days later, Discord's like, we'll take 8%. So how low does it go now? It's going to change everything. And look, I've seen a lot of Valve fanboys coming out of the woodwork the last week and a half, trying to make up excuses for Steam and for Valve. Some people weren't happy that, I laid into Valve saying that they were gouging us. They absolutely were gouging us for the last however long. You can try to sugarcoat it however you want. They have been charging way more money than they needed to charge for this service all along. Now that someone comes in and sets the market at reality, now we're starting to see what the real prices of this stuff is and what the real cost of running a business like this is. So, it's not just the fact that, hey, now there's this Epic store, and that's a big deal, and they have some exclusive games that aren't going to be on Steam. It's the competition side of it and how it ultimately is going to cut digital services and the rates that they charge the creators down to the bone. And it's starting at games. It's going to go into movies and TV shows and music and everything else that you download digitally. There is no longer an excuse for a service provider to take 30% cut. There is none. There's no valid reason for that to happen going forward. And it's going to be interesting to see how all these other services, not just in gaming, but in entertainment in general, start adjusting and change. And how long is it until someone does the same thing in the music space? And they're like, you know what? Instead of taking 30 cents for every song like iTunes does, we'll take a nickel. How long is that? It's not going to be that long. And they're going to be inspired by Epic. This is going to be something that's going to be pointed to in so many meetings, in so many pitch meetings for companies trying to get funding. So say tomorrow you and I are like, let's be that music company that only charges a nickel per song. There are people doing that all over the world right now. And they're talking about Epic's Game Store when they try to make their point, when they try to get that money from investors, when they try to convince their uncle to give them 20 grand to give to somebody to build their idea. This is what's going to be pointed to. So it's not just the repercussions in the games industry, which are huge, but this is going to stretch outside of games and affect entertainment as a whole. So I think we did a good job picking those. I think those ultimately were the two stories that are going to have the biggest ripple effects throughout the industry and beyond, honestly. Next up, worst game. It's not actually the worst game, though, and we say this every year. There are far worse games out there than the games that Matt and I are about to talk about. We're saying the worst games that we personally played. And yes, we are very fortunate. We can pick and choose what we want to play. Generally, we choose to play the really good stuff or at least the big budget stuff. So we don't play a ton of bad games anymore, but we did play two. And what's your pick, Matt?
My pick is Detroit Become Human. I hate this game a lot. It's the most insipid, idiotic story I was told all year in any medium, frankly. I don't think it earns any of its civil rights thematic ideas because you can't, I think I've said it before, you can't unmoor the idea of racist chattel slavery that lasted 400 years from the civil rights experience and just turn it into androids because it doesn't match. It doesn't work. equivalent. You can't make it as on the nose as this game makes it. There is a parallel to be made there, but the fact that they're like throwing Martin Luther King quotes at me and like doing like these direct parallels is at best ham-handed and at worst offensively insulting. I mean, I was gonna say insulting.
Yeah.
I think the tech is amazing. Like it's a beautiful game, like, especially on a PS4 Pro. It is one of the best looking games out there. In fact, it would probably be my second or third choice for best graphics.
That's a big statement.
Well, maybe third. I don't know. It didn't get my runner up for best graphics. Let's put it that way. But it is really, really good looking. I've said it before. I wish someone would take this level of tech and this level of budget away from David Cage and give it to someone who can actually tell a story that is worthy of this level of presentation. Because I'm kind of out of patience with it.
I'll put it to you this way: I played his last 2 games. I didn't play this one.
Yeah,
I played the demo, but when the full game came out, I never played it because I was like, you know what? I gave you a second chance with Beyond after Heavy Rain, and I'm not giving him a third chance.
On the strength of like kind of the detective bit of the demo, I was willing to give him a strike 3, and he did not hit the pitch.
You're out.
Yeah. So fooled me once. Fooled me twice, fooled me 3 times. I don't know. I was an idiot the last 2 times, I guess, for believing that. I think this is probably the best.
Well, no, you enjoy narrative-driven games.
Yeah.
You want the games to be good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right, but I should know better than to spend $60 on something David Cage made.
Well, you won't do that again.
I mean, okay, look.
You love narrative games, so it took you 3.
Right.
I don't love narrative games. It took me 2. That makes perfect sense.
I probably wouldn't have gotten it at launch if we weren't going to discuss it on the show.
Yeah.
If it was just me, I would have waited until I could get it for like $19 like now or whatever. And I still wouldn't have liked it, but at least I would have only spent a third of the money on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's probably the closest he's gotten to a good game. For whatever that's worth.
You think it's better than Beyond?
A little bit. I think it has a strength in that the branching stuff is more thought out in terms of how it's integrated into how you play and go back and replay the game. It's easier to do that. Beyond was a little more.
But here's a perfect example of why I hate his games.
Yeah, you got to clean.
It's
always going to be cleaning.
You have to go up and down with the analog stick.
ABC, always be cleaning with the analog stick. So you're going to do a lot of household chores in these games.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I was annoyed by with Beyond Two Souls was the out-of-sequence storytelling, which, as far as I could determine after 2 playthroughs, does nothing to drive home any element of the narrative or the themes. It's just out of order because I guess they thought that was more interesting. It's that thing where like a lot of games do that thing where like they want to open with a big bang, so they start with like one of the big action scenes, and then like you have to play the next 2/3 of the game to catch up to that. But like the problem is that's a stupid device if there's no reason for me to know that happened before I go through the rest of the story.
Right.
It's like in Uncharted 2 where you start in that wrecked train and he's injured and you're like, what's going on? Where is he? How did he get here? And like the fact that you know that's coming and the fact that you're waiting for him to get on that train and you're sort of like, and once you see that scene again, you know all this other information and you understand
like,
what happened.
Connected the dots.
Like that's a good example of how to use that.
Right.
But Beyond just does that. And if you play Beyond in like chronological order, it makes way more sense. So it's like you didn't do it. But this game
They're
just
just
goes.
trying to overcomplicate
This game
it.
just goes straight through it, tells a straight story from 3 different perspectives, and that is at least a step forward in the sense that you didn't needlessly complicate it for the sake of making it look like you're super deep, man. But yeah, this game blows.
My pick for the worst game that I played this year is Fallout 76. It's the worst game I played this year. And I am spoiled. I get to play all the best games. It's not like when I was at GT and I had to make sure that like everyone was getting. I get to play all the good ones now, which is nice.
I feel like a lot of people are not going to disagree with you.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I really don't have to make a point. I don't really have to back up my point here. Fallout 76 is a bad game. I don't have to play a lot of bad games anymore. Therefore, it's the worst game I played in 2018. Let's move on.
It did sneak up on you, to be fair.
It did. I tried to give it a chance. I tried.
I mean, it's not like The Crew 2 where like 10 minutes into the demo, I was like, oh, like you came out of that demo with very positive I mean, I was a little taken aback. But like,
Yeah.
you even said you should spend $60 on it.
I did.
I mean, that is a good first impression.
It was a good first impression, and then literally, like when I started playing it again, like an hour after where I stopped from the beta, I was like, "Oh God, no! This is all there is." Yeah, I apologize for initially recommending it. At least you couldn't buy it then. That's the good.
Yeah,
you could have pre-ordered it, but you could have canceled it. I'm glad that by the time you were actually able to buy it, I had come to my senses and played more of it and realized it was so terrible. So, yeah, worst game I played this year, hands down, Fallout 76. Next up is a category that also confuses people because people think this category is games that we hated, but it's not. It's a game we didn't get. So generally, it's a game that is viewed favorably by most that we did not seem to like as much as other people. It's not that we hate it, it's that we just don't like it as much as everybody else. So we could still actually really like these games, but maybe they're a phenomenon and we're like, I don't really get why they're this big thing. Matt, what is your pick?
Mine is Monster Hunter World. And this is sort of my series for this because
You don't get it.
I don't get it. I see Monster Hunter and I see the phenomenon around Monster Hunter, and everything about Monster Hunter should appeal to me, and I just don't like playing them.
Yeah, you know what? It does boggle my mind that you don't like Monster Hunter.
There is
Because it seems to me pretty much everything else about it would be something that you'd like.
It is absolutely, and I don't fully understand why. I don't like the way it feels. I don't like the way it plays. I don't like the pacing of it. I don't like how how the whole thing unfolds. I think that it just leaves me ice cold.
No, I agree with you. I do not like the combat. I don't like this. I don't feel like the swords, even though the swords are like 20 feet long and probably weigh half a ton, I don't feel like there's any weight to the weapons in this game. I don't feel the weight of the weapons when I play
you feel the slowness of them,
right?
But I don't feel a lot of weight to them.
And a lot of that's just audio design, to be honest.
True. I played a lot of different character classes. I've tried different weapons, and from ranged and bruisers and fast, agile character, and I just don't like any of it. And I want to, I see all these videos of these crazy monsters people are fighting and the cool armor they're wearing. I'm like, oh, that would be great. That's awesome. But I just don't like it.
You want to know what surprised me the most about the fact that you don't like Monster Hunter is that you liked Phantasy Star Online.
That's actually the kind of the pedigree of this, that I'm like, why, if I like Phantasy Star Online, why don't I like this?
Yeah, it's weird.
It's so similar in terms of just basic concept,
yeah,
and in a lot of ways execution.
Yeah.
But for whatever, I've tried the original. I tried Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii.
That's the one I got really hooked on.
That's the one I played the longest because I was playing with a group online, but I never liked it. I just kept playing because everyone else wanted to play, and if I didn't play, they would have a harder time playing. But after the third time we fought the underwater guy, I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. One thing I would say is that once you get that far into one Monster Hunter game, your draw to go back and do it again is really low. I played Monster Hunter Tri. I literally bought a keyboard that would work with my Wii just to play it. I was all in. I bought the Pro Controller just to play it, and I got into it. I played Tri.
I got the headset adapter thing.
Right?
Yeah. So.
I played the heck out of Tri. I played a ton of it, but by the time I got done and wrapped it up, I had no interest in playing the franchise anymore. And it could be the case with this game, too. There are millions of people who just played this for the first time. And they may find themselves in that same boat 2 years from now when the next Monster Hunter comes out where they're like, you know what? I'm good. Especially now that it's a game as a service. This is going to go on for the next 2 years. So we'll see if people burn out on it the way that we have. But
and I would probably
But it has been a kind of a mini phenomenon this year, Monster Hunter
sure.
World. Yeah.
And I don't, I'm not saying it's bad. I just doesn't click with me in a way that I don't get. I mean, don't get is really the right term for this game for me. Is like I look at this, I'm like, there is no reason I shouldn't like this, but I don't.
It just doesn't click with you.
I wish it was more like Dragon's Dogma, frankly. Yeah. I wish it had a little more speed, a little more verticality to the fighting in places, a little less just hammering away at damage sponges until they fall over. A little more dynamism to it, I guess. But I just don't have the patience. I don't care about kind of hacking my way through the various systems, And I was also a little. I find the premise a little odd in terms of how it's presented in this, where they're talking. It's like, we've finally made it to this amazing new world with incredible new creatures. Go kill them all and take their teeth.
Yeah.
You know? Like that's not what's. There's constant talk about like research and science, and I'm like, that's not what research and science is. That's trophy hunting. Okay?
Yeah. Well, it does come from the country that kills whales.
Yeah. Yeah, but at least
and thinks there's no problem with it when the rest of the world is deplored by it.
But at least they eat them.
Right.
This
they
is
actually
just like,
use it. Yeah.
It's like at best you're making a coat. You know, like, and really it was like early on when I ran into this thing where like it's like one of the dinosaur things or whatever I was supposed to hunt, and I hit him with a few times and I didn't kill him, and he sort of like limped away and ran, so I had to chase him down while he like cried and limped like away from me until I finally got.
Makes you feel
I'm like,
guilty.
this is not really doing it for me, folks. This is. Yeah, I don't have the
it does make you feel bad when you see them like limping away.
I mean, I feel bad when I poke.
And then you're like running after them with the sword, like I'm gonna finish you off.
I feel bad when certain Pokemon faint, let alone like.
Well, they're not like bad guys.
No, they're
like,
just creatures.
They're just creatures that are just living in their habitat. And you just roll up and start murdering them.
But we have to cut their heads off so we can learn about them. That's not a single scientist in this game seems to just observe shit. They all just want to like dig into the corpses. It's very weird.
It is weird. All right, my pick for a game I didn't get, and I think I'm not alone on this one. My pick is Fortnite Battle Royale. Well documented. I am not a big Battle Royale guy.
I think you might be alone on this one, judging by the numbers.
Well, I don't think so. I think the people that watch SIFTD and most of the people that are going to watch this on YouTube don't play Fortnite. Fortnite is like the casual players, like Jamboree. Everybody I know that's only kind of into games plays Fortnite. People who I know that are really into games never play Fortnite. And maybe that's why I don't get it either. There are so many other first-person shooters on the market that are better. But I guess really maybe what I am getting that I'm thinking I'm not getting is that it's free. I just wonder if that's really the most of it, of what's made it a hit.
Can't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely doesn't hurt. But it's just odd to me that there have been so many great shooters throughout the years, and this is the one that has just become a sensation.
Well, I think it's free. It's the new hotness in terms of game mode, and by the time other competitors that maybe are more polished but are charging money, like Blackout, people are invested. You know, that's the thing is like, you know, I mean, you didn't give it best game as a service for nothing. Like they know how to keep people interested, involved, and hooked, and I mean they're real good at that. I think there's probably a couple psychologists on staff in there, or at least consulting.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it, too, is that a large segment of its audience is really young. Really young. So we have like a text message thread with all my friends from Philly that we just jump on and talk about whatever. And one of my friends jumped on and was like, hey, what's up with this Fortnite? Like, my son came home from school and said people were making fun of him because he isn't good at Fortnite. And I'm like,
What a different world.
It is a different world. You used to be made fun of for playing video games. Now you're made fun of because you're not good enough at them.
Yep.
And this has created a cottage industry of people who teach kids how to play Fortnite. And my buddy's like, is it worth it? I'm like, bro, don't you dare pay somebody to teach your son how to play Fortnite. And if you do, don't you dare tell me about it, man. Like, what are you even thinking? But there are hundreds of thousands of parents around the country right now that are in that position. My kid is getting ostracized at school because either he doesn't play or he's not good enough. And that's what I don't get. That to me is something I cannot. And maybe part of it is the way we grew up. Like, where if you were a gamer, you were a nerd. You're an outcast.
I mean, that's been for a long time now. It's been, there were even studies like in the mid-2000s, mid-aughts, I don't know. But we decided what to call that decade yet.
Yeah.
That basically said, like, in modern kids, if you aren't letting your kids play video games, at least to some degree, they are more likely to end up being socially outcast because it's such a standard part of playing.
It's happening with Fortnite.
Yeah, and the thing about Fortnite, it's the pervasiveness in the culture is astounding. In part because kids love it so much, so the parents have to be aware of it, which is part of it. But I mean, I was at a Bewitched convention in August for various reasons. Yeah. But I was probably the youngest person there. But everyone
there's a surprise.
Yeah. But everyone there was like usually in their 60s or whatever. every single one of them knew what Fortnite was.
Yeah, because they're probably a
Because
grandma.
the grandparents or they had kids,
yeah.
like there were people with kids there that like, oh,
Yep.
and the thing was like, you know, there was one woman she was an author. She's about our age, but she had her like 13-year-old kid there. I think he was about that old. And you know, she was an author and she was selling books. So she had a little table there, and he was, you know, the kid was just sitting there playing his phone or whatever. And we talked for a little while because she knew my dad. And she mentioned you know, games and what I do, and I mentioned oh, she like Fortnite, and the kid totally changed. Like he was a sullen kind of teenager just playing his phone doing his Fortnite, and like suddenly like we had like a 10-minute conversation about Fortnite. It was a completely different world, and
You
I'm
can
like,
relate all of a sudden.
yeah, and it was like, and you could tell like this is what this kid enjoyed and what
That's
he
his
loved
thing.
talking about.
Yeah.
Like his personality and facial makeup completely changed. Like all
like
of a sudden,
somebody else here knows what
Yeah.
Fortnite is.
and like that was like the moment
Like
where
that's my jam.
I was like, oh, I think this thing's really big.
Yeah.
And that was after. I mean, the E3 party was sign number one, obviously.
Yeah.
And I mean, even this week, what was the thing was Jimmy Kimmel. His thing this week was his YouTube challenge was parents go into your kids' room while they're playing Fortnite and turn the TV off.
Yeah.
They ran-
See what happens.
And like. Some of it's funny, but some of it, the kids are like attacking the parents.
Yeah,
for it.
yeah.
And like, of course, you see that posted on gaming sites, and like, turns out gamers don't have a lot of sense of humor about doing that.
Nope.
Like, well, they deserve to get hit in the phone. The kids like knocking phones out of parents' hands for like they're taping them, and then, well, what else do you expect when you turn someone's game off? It's just like, bro,
Not that.
not that, because that would have resulted in me getting my throat torn out.
Oh yeah.
So
you don't. But kids don't get their asses beat anymore.
my
That's just
favorite,
not the way it
my
is.
favorite was the one
I used to
kid.
get beat with a wooden spoon and a fly swatter.
My favorite was the one kid who the dad turns it off and he goes, "Why? What?
Yeah.
What are you doing?" Like he's like he just
Can't even compute.
No, he just starts laughing because he's like, "What? Why?
Yeah.
What would you do that for?" No, why? And like it's
Just completely bewildered.
but it's like that's how you don't get to be on a late night talk show as sort of and it wasn't like turn your kid's TV off when he's playing a video game. It was when he's playing Fortnite.
Right. Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
key. It's
It's a crazy world we live in.
I mean, I get why it's popular, but it's not a game I'm gonna play regularly. It's one of
Me
those,
either.
It's one of those things I understand from a distance, much like Minecraft.
Yep. All right, it's time to move into the big awards. We only have 1, 2, 3, 4 left. So we've already went through 19. We're doing pretty good. And these last 4 categories have runners-up in addition to the winners. So this is where we go all in. And the first category with runners-up is Best Graphics. Matt, what is your honorary mention for Best Graphics?
That would be God of War.
That would be me too. So we both agree God of War, the second best graphics of 2018.
Number 2.
Put that on your box. Second best graphics of 2018.
We almost did it.
Yeah. We've talked so much about this game already. Do we need? Have we not talked about the visuals yet? We really haven't.
A whole lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this, the scale of it is very impressive. You got the giant world serpent, and there's not.
It's not as like overwrought with that stuff as the prior games
not
were,
as many
though.
boss battles as I might have liked, but the ones that are there are insane graphical tour de forces. And like I believe the one dragon fight like took them like over a year to just make that. And
Yeah.
it was I understand why there's not so many boss battles in this game because at this level of fidelity that stuff just is incredibly work intensive.
Yeah.
I expect there'll be more in the second one. But just the fidelity on this, and on the Pro, but also on the regular PS4, like it's pretty much unmatched.
Yeah, this is base
Like-
PS4 footage you're looking at right here,
like,
by the way.
It's just astounding.
It
what
really
they pulled
is,
off here.
yeah.
And they're using a lot of tricks, a lot of clever stuff. Limiting the size of the view distance in each of the areas, and like
Yeah, it's not an
strategically
open
placed
world
walls.
game. There is loading and
But like just the size of the characters and the animation of everything and the way everything moves and feels like it has weight and power and substance in the world, like
the category
does
also
not
isn't
stop.
like best graphics in an open world game.
Right.
It's best graphics, period. So
And this is an early, it's an early release in the year, but I remember just playing this and thinking like, why do we need new game consoles?
Yeah,
'Cause
seriously.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. There are so many, and a lot of the most memorable visual moments from that game, it wasn't about like a big creature or some scene where something crazy happens. It was literally just about like the art, the lighting, the fog. Like,
I think even that very beginning when you hit start and he cuts the tree down and just lifts it onto his shoulder.
yeah.
And like just the way they sell in
The
such,
weight
in
of
such
it
a
and his
belie-
strength.
in such a belief of realistically, realized graphic style,
Yeah.
and they just sell these crazy, inhuman, mythological, superhuman moments in a way that you don't even think twice about. You just believe it.
They just look believable. Absolutely. Our winner for the best graphics of 2018, and we both have the same winner here. So we had
Again.
the same runner-up and the same winner. The winner is Red Dead Redemption 2. Yeah.
Like it's not
This
even
is
a
an
question.
easy category.
Yeah.
Like, there's just like the fact that they took the time to create visuals around so many irrelevant parts of the game. Just right here, the skinning of the animals. Like, there's some animals that you just like grab their tail and just like rip their skin off like a jerk. Like,
Yeah, it's a couple of the smaller like badger-sized animals. It's just like Arthur turns into a magician.
yeah. Well, I
He's
mean,
like,
actually, you can
ta-da!
really skin animals that way. It's not that easy, but you can.
Probably not with your bare hands ripping into their asshole, I would think.
No,
'Cause that's
no.
what he does. He
You have to
sticks his-
start with, like, an
you need a
incision,
knife
yeah.
somewhere in there,
Yeah.
I would think. Because he literally, it's what he picks the thing up,
But,
sticks
I mean-
his hand in, and just, poof.
But this is but just look at what we're talking about right now. I
Yep.
mean, that just shows you like the level of detail that they've gone through with this game. Like the animation. I wonder how much animation data is in this game. Like it has got to be like
Gigs.
double anything else
And
that's
that's
ever
just
come
like
before.
text, that's
Right.
like, that shouldn't take up any space at all, but it's just endless.
It's just
I think, and also I think, you mentioned God of War with the open world caveat. I don't know if I've ever seen an open world game hide its pop in and level of detail draw in better than this game.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that a lot. And especially when you're dealing with higher resolutions, like with the PS4 Pro
Yeah.
or the Xbox One X, you'll see where
you see the LOD a
where the
lot more,
LED
obviously.
changes.
Yeah.
It's one of the only real graphical flaws of Horizon Zero Dawn, I would
Yeah.
say. It's most recently, I would say,
it's like, look
in
at
Just
this.
Cause 4, it's horrendous. But I can't remember seeing it, except like maybe certain times when I was like riding the horse really, really fast
Yeah.
downhill, and maybe like a bush faded in.
Yeah.
It's so minor.
But it's even like when the bullets are hitting like the rock. Look at the rocks flying.
Yeah.
Like just if you can look at every scene in this game and find something in that scene that you're like, damn, just everywhere. The attention to detail in this game is second to none ever. I mean, of course they had 8 years to make it or whatever, and maybe you can call that cheating, but this award isn't like the best graphics for a game that took 2 years or less to make. Like, this is the best graphics, and this is probably the best looking game I've ever seen, PC
Yeah.
included. And I can't even imagine what the PC version's eventually going to look like.
Yep.
Just think about that. Holy crap. This was easy, man. I mean, the only eyesore in this game are the character models. And part of that is Rockstar's art style. They have a weird art style for human characters. But they just can't, the hair just looks bad. But I think part of it is that the rest of the game looks so amazing that the hair just stands out like a sore thumb in a lot of ways.
And I think playing something that really does drop the graphical ball in places recently, which was Just Cause 4.
Yeah.
The Arthur's hair is not fantastic, but then you see Rico Rodriguez's hair, and you're like, oh yeah, that could have been.
It's just
way
a plastic
worse.
helmet. Yeah, absolutely. So there you go. Best graphics of 2018, Red Dead Redemption 2, no contest. Next up, most innovative, and again, we have a runner-up for this category. This one was a little tough this year, I think. Wasn't a really innovative year for games, because like in years past we had like hardware innovation with like PlayStation VR and ththings like that. But this year we're pretty much...
You would have thought that there'd be a couple VR games that kind of push that innovation envelope, but there wasn't really anything.
The best VR game this year was a VR game that just emulated a classic platformer. So, I mean, it appears that some of the best VR experiences are experiences we've already had before.
Just
Just with a new perspective.
Perspective matters,
Yeah,
I guess.
it does matter. Okay, so what is your runner-up for most innovative, Matt?
My runner-up is Yoku's Island Express.
We've talked about that on the show.
Yeah, we've talked about it. It's basically a Metroidvania meets pinball.
Yep.
And you play a little bug who has a little, like a ball attached to, I guess, uncomfortably dung beetle-esque, actually, I would say. But basically, he's got a pinball with him, and he gets a job. His new job is on this island, and he takes over as basically the mail carrier. And you have to deliver letters to everybody on the island. And there's a whole bunch of, you have to meet these people and get this upgrade. And so there's all these different upgrades and abilities he gets over the course of the game, like a Metroid game. And every time you get one, you can get into a new area easier. But the trick is that all the traversal is done like a pinball machine. So it's all kind of like done up like organically, like it's all convenient little flippers in caves and like little branches of trees flipping things up and stuff. But like every little area has like a little pinball challenge to complete, and then you get the things, open the door, go to the next area. Yeah. So it's like this weird mix of two things I like a lot, and they actually did it really well.
Yeah, it's a really good game.
It's like nothing else I've ever played.
I definitely recommend picking up that game. Like, if you can find it on a sale here in the next month or two, it's really, really good.
It's definitely the thing that would always pop to mind when I think about what's the most innovative or weirdest thing I've played this year.
Yep.
And yeah, it's other years maybe it wouldn't make the cut, but this year
That's where we're
it's
at,
one of the
though.
few things that showed me something new.
Yep. My runner-up for most innovative is, and this might be a surprise to some people, Sea of Thieves. And much like you, Matt, like first of all, I was like, oh wait, I need to pick two for this year. I was like, maybe we should just eliminate like the runner-up. And so I started like going through my mind, and I'm like, what were like the more unique experiences that I had in 2018? And I'll be perfectly honest with you, Sea of Thieves is probably the most unique experience. Whether you like it or not, or you are entertained by it or not, I can't say I've ever played another game like it.
It's different.
Where every person's real, and every person has a role to play that's specific to that person, and it's not a redundant role. Everyone's doing something different and having to work in concert to work against other teams. I've just never really played a game like that before. Do I feel like Rare dropped the ball a bit as far as providing interesting and fun things to do within that context? Absolutely. But to me, there's no denying that it was a very ambitious idea and one that Rare ultimately pulled off. And I should also add that Rare is doing a good job of listening to fans and making adjustments and tweaks.
Yeah,
And
like I said, I think when it launched, I said like I feel like this game is going to be very different a year from now.
yeah, because like already what I kind of talked about when it launched, which was, hey, let's have like cooperative creature hunts. They're coming. Like all the stuff that we had kind of talked about at launch, they were like, hey, we'd like to see this. It should have that. All that stuff is on the way now. So I think Sea of Thieves is going to get to a good place. But to me, definitely one of the more innovative products that came out in 2018.
Definitely brave.
Absolutely. Maybe some people would say stupid.
Those two are not exclusive to
Nope.
one another. Yeah.
It's a fine line between bravery and stupidity,
Yep.
no matter what you're talking about. Okay, and then our winner for the most innovative game or innovative product of 2018, and we both have the same choice, Nintendo Labo. Labo.
At first, I was like, "Can I give Variety Pack the winner and then runner-up the robot one?" Just like, but then I remembered Yoku's Island Express.
Yeah. Certainly the most innovative product of the year.
Yeah.
I would argue that it wasn't the most successful from either a financial standpoint or...
No, I mean, it did okay. I think as far as I know, it did within expectations.
Yeah.
They kind of intended it as more of a separate learning product sort of branch.
Yeah.
And it seems to have done that.
Nintendo finally has its third pillar.
Woo! I was going to knock it over with a cardboard robot.
Now the connectivity is gone. We have to come up with a new one.
Now we get cardboardtivity.
Yeah. But the first time I saw Labo, I was just blown away. Like, it is literally just one of those things that you're like, only Nintendo would have ever thought of that. Like, and maybe other companies would have thought about it, but they would not have the balls
Wouldn't have made it out of the
to
meeting.
actually produce it.
Yeah, you're back up against the brave versus stupid thing.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's innovation kind of in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah.
The
Also,
fine line.
ballsy to charge me that much money for cardboard.
Yeah.
I gotta give you that.
Hey, but kudos to Nintendo for bringing yet another one of Pachter's prophecies to life. where he said that Nintendo fans would pay for cardboard if it had Nintendo's logo on it, and he was right.
Here we are.
And here we are. The games ultimately so far have been disappointing, and I think the jury's still out on what kind of support we're going to get long term for this. But the actual concept and the idea behind it is like mind-blowingly awesome. Am I going to play it again? No.
No, but like you can't deny that this is like nothing else on the market, and
I'm also not
and
so
it,
old.
And it works.
Yeah, I'm also
works.
not so old where I can't remember what it would be like
Right.
to be a child and see something like this.
And to destroy that fishing rod in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, but I would put it together first,
Right.
and then I destroy it. As a kid, I could see that this being like the most memorable thing that you played
Switch
all year.
play. That's the pillar here.
Yeah.
Play.
Yeah, right. I guess that is what it is. But both of us agree, Nintendo Labo, the most innovative thing this year, in a year that wasn't actually ripe with innovation in general, I would say.
I mean, at the very least, it's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Unfortunately, we don't have an award for that. Maybe we will next year. Next up, our next to last category. Most anticipated game of 2019. And when we get back for the holidays, we'll be doing a SIFTD countdown of the most anticipated games. And, of course, with Game Face, we will do a big 2019 year preview to kick things off for next year. But for now, we're just picking 2 games. So what's your runner-up for most anticipated game of 2019?
the runner-up is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, which
From
is
Software's
pretty
next
much mandatory as a Dark Souls fan. I realize it's not really a very Dark Souls-y game, it turns out. It's being more directly compared to something like Ninja Gaiden.
That's good.
But
That's a good comparison.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. At this point, I will play pretty much anything these guys throw at me, and I think it looks really cool.
It is interesting how long From Software has been around.
Yeah,
And nobody cared about From Software for the first, 20-some years of its existence.
well, especially since they were basically making Dark Souls as King's Field before.
I know.
I mean, that's
Nobody picked up on it, yeah. It just never resonated until it got a little bit better production values, I guess. I don't even know, because Demon Souls it wasn't a looker.
no.
What is it that set it off? I wonder.
Well, part of it was Dark Souls. Most fans would say that Dark Souls is a better game than Demon Souls.
Well, yeah.
And also,
It should
Dark
be.
Souls was not just a PlayStation 3 exclusive.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. That's
So-
true. In an obscure PlayStation 3 exclusive. I remember we saw it at TGS and
Yeah.
we laughed at it.
Well, so did Sony.
Ryan Stevens did, and Ryan Stevens is now the world's biggest
Yep.
Souls fan.
I mean, Sony published it in Japan.
Yeah.
Or was it? Yeah, and they didn't
Yeah.
even want to touch it, and it took Atlas to bring it out here.
Yep, absolutely.
And now they won't make a remake. It's like one of the most requested remakes in existence. Is
They're
Demon
holding all the
Souls.
cards now. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, we'll do what
And
we
now
want.
they're not even coming to E3. We may never see this thing.
My runner-up for most anticipated game of 2019 is my winner of most anticipated game for 2018, and that is Anthem. It has dropped down a notch for me. Last year it was my winner. This year it's my runner-up. I think that's actually kind of encouraging, though, because we thought it was coming out this past year. It did not. And a lot of times that kind of turns you off to a game. I'm still really excited for Anthem. Like, really, really
More time
excited.
can only help a game like this.
That's true. I mean, as far as this final quality and everything, it's
Yeah.
only going to get better. But my hype level hasn't really changed that much, despite the fact that it's been delayed and it's had a bit of a rocky development cycle, and there's been some controversy here and there. I am still really, really excited for this. I had the prospect of getting into the alpha a week and a half ago, and I was just so excited. And as it turned out, the person did not have an extra code. They had reached out to me, and I thought that they were saying, "Hey, I have an extra code for the alpha. Do you want in?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I want in." And then they're like, "Oh no, I don't actually have a code." I was just telling you that in case you wanted to talk about me playing it on Game Face. That's not what he said, but basically what he's saying is if you wanted a heads up so that you knew people were playing it already, here it is. So I'm still really jacked up for Anthem. I don't care what anybody says about BioWare or anything else. This game to me looks freaking awesome.
That suit doesn't look like it smells very good.
No, it doesn't. But that's a testament to the game,
Yeah.
right? You looked at that, you're like, man, that stinks. So I have not lost hope for Anthem. I'm still really excited for it, and we don't have to wait much longer to find out if I'm an idiot.
I
or
would say
not.
that's more of a giant question mark to me. Maybe
Yeah.
most curious. It would win for me. I just don't know what I'm going to think about that game.
Now, here's the big surprise to me, Matt. your winner for most anticipated game of 2019 is...
Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown.
I saw it. It blew my mind when I saw that, Matt. Literally, I mean, it didn't surprise me that much because we're different and you like different stuff than I do. But that still was a shocker to me.
Yeah, I love planes. I love all the Ace Combat games. I've been waiting. I mean, the Ace Combat 6 came out, 11 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, that series has been gone forever. With the, Assault Horizon was garbage Call of Duty wannabe stuff. And then, like, Infinity was fine, but it was very free to play and very, grindy. Wasn't all that interesting. This is a return to form. It's got 3. I wish it had more, but it has 3 VR missions I'm super interested in. Apparently, they're very good, even though they're somewhat short. And I love the ridiculous, over-the-top, cheesy, Japanese soap opera style stories that these games have. And it's coming right out. It's right at the front of the year, so it's kind of top of my list right now.
Wow.
And it looks gorgeous. Like, it looks great. And pre-orders, you get like backwards compatible versions of 5 and 6, depending on which platform you're on. I'm a big Ace Combat fan from back in the day, back when it was called Air Combat on the PlayStation 1 and Electrosphere and all that stuff. And so, yeah, like I'm excited to see
You
this
love a
game come back.
franchise. You haven't got it for a long time. I can absolutely see why it would talk to
That's why Devil May Cry fans are excited.
I'm surprised you did not pick the game that I am about to pick. My most anticipated game for 2019 is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn.
Well, I can tell you why I didn't pick that.
Why?
I don't know anything about it, so I can't be excited about it
There's
because I don't
some
know what it is.
information out there, though.
Is there?
Yeah. They're saying it's Force Unleashed that doesn't suck.
So not Force Unleashed.
Right,
at all.
well. They're saying the design is similar to Force Unleashed. But
I need to see that before I get any hopes up. And also, I'm not 100% convinced we're going to see it next year.
Again, that was another thing I looked up today, and EA swears Holiday 2019, Respawn swears Holiday 2019.
Okay.
I'll put it to you this way, Matt. I'm not drafting it.
Okay, yeah.
Not with EA, the way I've been burned by EA in the past. I'm not going to draft it. I'm just telling you that as of right now, that's when it's scheduled to come out. All parties involved are confirming that that's the case. And, dude, a Star Wars game made by Respawn?
Sure. Honestly, when I was thinking about this category, it did not even enter my mind.
Really?
No. That game doesn't exist to me until I see something.
Fair enough.
Because I'm very picky about my Star Wars.
I get it. I am too, but I'm also a sucker.
It's not like EA hasn't dropped the ball already.
That's
so
true. Yeah, but
we'll see.
this is different. It's Respawn.
I have faith in Respawn, but Respawn's still got to answer to the Master.
Yep.
The Jedi Master. The Sith Master. Really, it's EA. Let's not forget.
All right, we've come to the moment, folks. It's time for us to share our game of the year for 2018. We do have a runner-up for each one of these, and then we ultimately have a winner. Matt, what is your runner-up for Game of the Year 2019?
The runner-up is Spider-Man, which hasn't really been mentioned a lot tonight.
It has got short shrifted, absolutely.
It got Kratos.
It did
all
get
night.
Kratos, yeah.
But I really love this take on Spider-Man. Overall, the universe and the character himself. It turned out, I always had faith in this game because of Insomniac, but it actually really did turn out better than I even thought it would.
That's my hope with Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
I trust the studio. I love the IP. Please knock it out of the park.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Don't make the lightsabers Nerf bats this time. How about just that? But like, I enjoyed every minute of this game.
I love this game.
It is
love it, love it, love it.
I go back and forth between this and Arkham City as the best superhero game ever made. It really depends on what hour you ask me a little bit. I haven't been super impressed by the DLC, but like
I haven't either.
That base game is phenomenal, and it has some new perspectives and new ideas for some of these characters have been around since the 60s, and it made some of them feel real fresh. And I'm extra impressed by that as an old school, comic book fan. That and this is not just true of this game, but a lot of Spider-Man stuff. But like, I'm always amazed that Spider-Man still has a way to surprise me every now and then.
Yep.
And just as a property, just as a character, and Insomniac did that constantly in this game, and I love that. It's a pristine piece of work in terms of just the action and the combat,
and the writing is well above par for a superhero game, let alone
Oh,
a
it's
game in
mind-blowing
general.
for a superhero game.
Especially a superhero that's been so thoroughly explored as this one. Like the
Yeah.
fact that they had some new ideas and some new takes on these characters that I think in large part were better ideas than what's happening in the comics right now. That may or may not be damning with faint praise, depending on your opinion of current Marvel. I think compares favorably to any adaptation of Spider-Man in any medium ever. Certainly, like, I don't know. I wonder how, like, the people that used to handle Marvel's contracts and Marvel's games from the Marvel side during the Activision era, like, do they look at this and think, like, wow, this is what we could have been making all this time?
I don't know about that.
But
this is definitely using bleeding edge tech and all that. So.
Yeah, but you could. I mean, that was always there if you wanted to care and not hand it off to basically a sweat house like Activision. So I'm happy it turned out the way it did. I'm glad it was crazy successful the way it was, which I never had any doubt on it. But like it even broke the highest sales expectations Sony had for it.
Yeah.
So that seems a pretty safe bet. We're going to get one or two more of them.
That's
so,
good news.
Bring that on.
Okay.
And maybe next time it will be Game of the Year.
Yeah.
Because it has the potential, no question.
Absolutely. My runner-up, and I will say that choosing this game over Spider-Man was the hardest decision I made throughout the entire Game of the Year awards for 2018. Not just for this category, but in general, it was a recurring head-to-head confrontation that I had to choose between, and I chose this game over Spider-Man, but it was very hard, and that's Red Dead Redemption 2. It's my runner-up for Game of the Year. And look, obviously, I'm not without complaints for this game, but man, what this game achieves and the way it pushes the medium into new directions, and maybe there are even directions that I don't like or care for. I mean, to be honest with you, they may not be. But the bottom line is this game is going to be hugely influential. And I think we're going to see little elements of this. I don't think we'll see anyone ever clone it because no studio is ever going to get 8 years to make a freaking game. Mm-hmm. They show you what you can do with 8 years. But I think we're going to see little parts of this, little elements of it, trickle down into other games. And you're going to see in reviews, in previews, hey, it has this one thing that's kind of like Red Dead Redemption 2. Hopefully that is not in relation to its multiplayer mode, but instead it's single-player mode. But there were so many moments that have stuck with me from this game. Even, a month and some after I finished it, I still find myself thinking about this game. And to me, that is, I don't know, probably one of the better ways to judge a game's impact over the long term instead of sort of having a recency bias, as we often do when we do these awards, even with games that just came out in March or whatever. It's so polished. The attention, I've talked about the attention to detail several times throughout this episode. The character development, I cared about the people in this game. I rarely do care about characters in video games. I loved Arthur. The ending had major impact for me. It was hard. The hardest part for me, Matt, in selecting this over Spider-Man is that gameplay is the most important thing to me in video games. And Spider-Man's gameplay destroys the gameplay in this game. But the other parts of Red Dead Redemption 2, in my opinion, were so far superior, not just to Spider-Man, but I feel like even in some ways the game that I choose for Game of the Year, that I just ultimately had to put it in the queue over Spider-Man. It was tough, man. Like, really, like, Spider-Man and Red Dead to me are like 2A and 2B. Like, I would be fine if, like, I woke up tomorrow and someone said, Shane, you gave Spider-Man runner-up, I'd be like, that's fine. I totally would be okay with that. But just a couple small things with Red Dead 2 put it over Spider-Man for me to seal the runner-up nomination from me.
Yeah, Red Dead, in comparison, Red Dead 2 does not make my top 5.
Wow.
I enjoyed a lot of stuff way more than Red Dead. I agree with you on the presentational and technical elements, and I think little bits of Red Dead systems are going to be lifted for future games for years to come. But it was not one of the things I had the most fun with this year at all. But, like, man, I never got tired of looking at it.
Yeah.
Never got tired of listening to it either.
Yeah. Okay, it's that time, folks. It is time for us to announce our Game of the Year for 2018. 2018. And this is a case where Matt and I, in fact, I think last year we had the same game as well. But
Yeah.
we had the same pick this year. And the game of the year for 2018 is God of War. Yeah. It's the best game of 2018.
Yeah, like I didn't know when this first showed up, I didn't know if like it was going to be able to survive the rest of the year.
Yeah.
In my number 1 slot with Spider-Man coming and Red Dead coming.
And they kept coming.
And all they kept coming.
And nothing could topple this.
No.
Yeah. It's just perfect. It's like everything about it. Like I played, like I loved Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but it was too long. And there were parts where it was drawn out. Same with Red Dead. I liked Red Dead, but the combat and the gunplay and everything in it is kind of janky, and so I could not give a game that has mediocre to worse gameplay game of the year. I just couldn't do it. God of War is the whole package. There is not one weak element in this game. Not one. Not one.
Nope.
I cannot think of any weak part of this game.
I can't remember the last game I played through the whole game. 100% all the other stuff, and then all the side content and post-game content, everything. And when I was done, I kind of didn't want it to end, but I also felt like I'd had enough.
It was perfect. The length of it was perfect.
The
And the way
thing
the systems all bubbled up, it did get a little top-heavy at the end. Like, I could see where they tuned the game for people who aren't quite as good at games as we are. But
the post-game took care of that.
Absolutely. Yep. And
the Valkyries and the I can't remember the name of the place that's poisoned. That maze.
Yeah.
That thing was. I was like, oh, I'm gonna hate this. I don't like things like this. This is gonna annoy me. I played that part for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like the first time I got into it, and like I get this. What is this? Oh, it makes this armor. Oh, this armor lets me last longer. And the thing. Okay, it just the way it all unfolded. The stuff that's there specifically to challenge you and like really make you push the combat to the next level in the way that you don't have to just to complete the story.
I just love like getting better at the game and like cracking open my abilities and getting better with other parts of the combat engine. So I wasn't just leaning on the axe all the time.
Or learning to use Atreus better.
Right.
It took me a long time to start incorporating
And that was interesting
him.
because I started using him immediately because I got in this weird boss battle where I couldn't win and I was using him to stun the enemy. You had breezed through that battle, so you had never been kind of forced to use him. And I remember after a couple days, I talked to you, and you're like, yeah, I'm just starting to use. I'm like, oh, I use him like every fight. And then next time I talk to you about it, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm starting to integrate him now, too. Like, and again, you don't have to use him at all, but when you do, you can do so much cool stuff. And again, the story resonates with me personally because of the stuff that I've gone through the last couple years, but I think for anyone, the story's great, and I think anyone can relate to it because you've been a son or a daughter, you've had a dad or a mother. Anybody can relate to the story
and also
the conflict.
And also you failed at things.
Absolutely.
Like part of it is about Kratos trying to do this thing he has no idea how to do, which is raise this son to be a good person. Yep. And he knows he's not a good person, so he doesn't know where to get the template from. But he's doing what he can. But that's why he's so folded in and withdrawn at the beginning, is because he doesn't want to break this child.
That was a great part about it, too, what you just said about how he's trying to raise his son to be better than him.
Yeah.
But all the way through the game, he's struggling with this fact of, how can I tell him, and even the son brings it up at certain points, like, what? You're awful.
Yeah.
And you're telling me how to be a good person? And Kratos struggles with that. I mean, just every part of this game was great. Every single part of it. We've lauded Red Dead Redemption 2 for, like, detail, attention to detail. That's in this game, too, by the way.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of little cool stuff in this game, hidden in the visuals, in the animations. It's Game of the Year 2018. I don't think any other game came close, to be honest with you. It was an easy choice for me. Like I said, runner-up was tough. I felt like, for different reasons, Red Dead and Spider-Man, you could kind of pick either one. But God of War, to me, clear and away winner, best game of 2018. So there you go. There's our Game of the Year awards for 2018, folks. But before we go, we're doing something different this year. We usually don't even run a trailer of the week during our Game of the Year episode, but we are this time. And not only that, while we do it, we are naming our trailer of the week for the first time. And
Of the year?
Trailer of the year, yes. What did I say, the
It's a
week?
trailer week.
Oh. Yeah, we're naming our trailer of the year for the first time. So, best trailer of 2018.
Every other episode, we have not told you what the trailer is. We're naming it now.
Yeah. And
We name it George.
And the award for the trailer of the year goes to Beyond Good and Evil 2 Cinematic Trailer.
Attention crew, all medics on duty.
Cook, do you hear me?
Roger, Uma.
Half the crew is dead drunk in my sick bay after eating your miraculous space chili.
Well, I have no idea what you mean. Our food is healthy. Invigorating.
Captain to crew, dead monkey in the crow's
Nest, I repeat, monkey down.
El Space Chili strikes again.
Copy that, Captain. Hey, Paige, bet we could use your space chili to overclock our engines.
Negativo, mi amor. Only you can melt my circuits.
Keep laughing, fools. The key ingredient to good cooking is love.
What?
Engineering to officers, we are dead in the water. I repeat.
Main engines are cursed. Nox, come in. What have we got on the scanners?
Jack shit. Nada. Hey, wait. I see something. 3 o'clock starboard. It's massive. Get back here, Shani. Pull off!
Lock down the bake hull.
Give me auxiliary engines. Deploy shields and bring our boat now! Brace yourselves!
Gods protect us.
Jade.
So there you go. Trailer of the year. You feel okay with that pick?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Trailer's awesome. I watched, I don't know, about 40 trailers in the last couple days. And that was, as soon as I saw that one, I was like, oh yeah. Like, how did I even forget? Like, I should have known that was a trailer of the year right away before I wasted all my time. So there you go. That's our trailer of the year, which is something we haven't done before. Before we get up out of here, we are not going to answer questions today. I'm sorry, guys. I should have mentioned it before we did the trailer of the year, so I apologize for those of you who put questions in the chat. I am doing a couple episodes of Ask Shane Anything. You guys asked great and a ton of questions. So there's going to be a couple episodes of Ask Shane Anything going up once I'm gone. There's going to be Pactor Factor is going to continue to roll, and there's going to be a couple more surprises. I have been killing myself for the last week and a half getting content ready to go for while I'm gone. So it's all scheduled. It'll go out on a schedule, and we'll alert you on social media whenever the stuff goes up. But we are going to have content up throughout the holiday break. Not a ton, but we're going to have some stuff. So hope you guys appreciate that and you watch it. I know you're going to be busy with the Christmas holiday and everything. So keep an eye out for that. And before we go, I actually have one more thing to do. Sam, can you turn down my mic, please?
Uh-oh.
Merry Christmas, Matt.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you. Yep, let me plug back in. So, I got Matt a Christmas gift. Actually, we all got Matt a Christmas gift because if I bought something, you guys actually bought something because without you, I have no freaking money. So, we got Matt a Christmas present to thank him for opening up his home to us for this entire year. I'm going to get choked up. It's really been awesome what he's done for SIFTD and for the site and for you guys for us to be able to keep Game Face going. Without him, I don't know what I would do. So I really appreciate him, and I hope he likes his gift. So Merry Christmas, Matt.
Well, thank you. We opening this, I assume?
And I did not wrap this, by the way. This was my wife.
I was going to say, I don't think you know how to tie
My wife is really good at this.
You know
And
how
I
to
was like,
tie
I
this
want
knot.
the gift to be awesome for Matt, so would you please wrap it? And she was more than happy to. So I probably should have brought a pair of scissors.
I got it. Uh-oh. That's great. Lego Voltron.
Yep, there it is.
This is, no kidding, the only thing on my Christmas list this year.
You told me, Matt.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remembered, but you said on this show that all you wanted for Christmas was Lego Voltron. And as soon as you said it, I was like, ding!
Boom! Well,
Winner!
That is no small thing. Thank you.
You're welcome, Matt.
Thank you, because you gave him the money. Cool.
Yeah, so it's like
Awesome.
6 different that snap
Yep.
together into one gigantic
It's
robot.
all five lions, and they combine. This was from an actual fan who made a Lego Ideas thing. It's like you can creators ideas and submit it, and if enough people vote for it, Lego will consider making it as an actual set. And they did, and they actually went out and got the license and did the whole thing.
It's funny because when I went to buy it, I kept thinking that it was like fake.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't come from like where Lego stuff usually comes
Yeah.
from. It comes from like these more like underground like toy companies. And I was like, I was like, I don't know. He said he wanted Lego Voltron. I don't know how they could get it wrong. Maybe they're spoofing it. And it's finally, I was just like, screw it. I'll buy it. If it's wrong, I'll send it back and then we'll get the right one. So there you go.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Voltron was needed once more.
That's right. Some of the people watching me don't even know who Voltron is.
Oh, no, Voltron's big on Netflix now. So.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. I forgot. So that's it for Game Face for 2018, folks. It's been an amazing year. I cannot leave for 2018 without thanking you guys again for everything that you've done this year, supporting us on Patreon. Those of you who have stayed on our old subscription service all this time, the people who have bought shirts in the last couple weeks just to be nice and help us out. I could go on and on. Vincent has been freaking amazing, a total rock star this year. Just Sam, it's just been an awesome, awesome year. I'm so thankful for so many people and so many things in 2018. It's been a tough year for us. It's been a tough year for me, but obviously, relatively speaking, it's been pretty easy. I look back across the last couple years. But having you guys there and knowing you guys have my back has made a world of difference. And that includes Sam and Matt as well. So, like I said, there will be content going through the site while I'm gone. Not as much as usual, but hopefully enough to keep you guys satiated until we get back. We get back in January. PAX predictions episode will roll out right in the first week. We'll do our big 2019 preview here. And we'll get ready and get you guys set for 2019. We're going to have a SIFTD Summit again in the first month of 2019, where we all get together and talk about the future of the site, the future of the content. I have a lot of ideas about what we want to do and how we want to do it and how we want to change things. We've learned a lot in the first year on Patreon, and we're going to apply that to the future. So thank you guys. It's been an amazing 2018, mostly because of you. Without you guys, this would all just be for nothing. So thank you so, so much for all your support on YouTube, SIFTD, Patreon, Twitch, all these platforms you guys come out to and support us. Some of you maybe only make it to one. We appreciate you no matter where you get our stuff. If you're watching it, if you're supporting us, you guys are freaking awesome. So have a very safe, very happy, very fun holiday season, and a very safe New Year's Eve. Make sure you take an Uber. Do not drink and drive. We want to see you guys in January. So much love. We'll see you on the other side.